Fall asleep to the entire story of William the Conqueror, the Norman who took England. Tonight, allow your thoughts to drift back almost 1,000 years, to an age when Europe felt unfinished. The forest stretched farther than anyone could comfortably imagine. Wolves still watched lonely roads. Monasteries flickered with candlelight against endless darkness, and castles, those stern stone giants we so often associate with the Middle Ages, were only beginning to appear across the landscape. Kings rarely slept soundly. Dukes trusted almost no one. Oaths were sworn with one hand upon holy relics and quietly forgotten the moment they became inconvenient. It was, in many ways, a century built upon ambition, uncertainty, and remarkably poor long-term planning. Somewhere beyond the English Channel, waves rolled steadily against the cliffs of Normandy. The sea carried merchants, pilgrims, fishermen, raiders, and occasionally armies. It cared very little which happened to be aboard. Salt filled the air, gulls circled overhead, and every harbor was a doorway to either opportunity or disaster. Often both. Our story begins there, not with a king, but with a child who was never expected to become one of history's most consequential rulers. A boy whose very birth made powerful men laugh. A boy whose enemies assumed would die before reaching adulthood. A boy known by an unkind nickname that followed him through much of his early life. William the Bastard. History, as it turns out, has a remarkable sense of irony. Long before William became the Conqueror, before England was transformed forever, before castles crowned nearly every important hill, and the English language itself began changing into something new, there was simply a child trying to survive a world where noble families considered murder a perfectly acceptable method of political negotiation. It sounds dramatic, because it was. Imagine yourself standing upon the Norman coast in the early 11th century. The morning fog hangs over the water like a blanket refusing to lift. Fishing boats rock gently against wooden piers. Smoke rises from cottages roofed with thatch. Horses stamp impatiently outside the timber hall of a local lord. Somewhere nearby, a blacksmith begins striking glowing iron upon his anvil, each rhythmic clang carrying through the cool air. Life moves slowly for ordinary people. They rise with daylight, work until dusk, pray for decent harvests, hope their lord remains alive long enough to avoid another civil war. It isn't a particularly ambitious wish. Normandy itself was surprisingly young. Just over a century earlier, this land had belonged to the descendants of Viking raiders. Men who had once terrified Europe from sleek longships eventually accepted something rather unexpected, land in exchange for peace. It was an arrangement that sounded questionable at first. Imagine telling generations of Viking warriors, instead of burning villages, have you considered becoming respectable landlords? Somehow it worked. The Viking leader Rollo accepted territory from the Frankish king in the early 10th century. His followers gradually adopted Christianity, married into local aristocratic families, learned French, and slowly transformed from feared raiders into one of Europe's most energetic warrior societies. They never entirely lost their taste for fighting, of course. Old habits die hard. By William's lifetime, Normandy had become a fascinating mixture of cultures. Viking determination blended with Frankish customs. Churches stood beside fortifications. Noble families competed constantly for land, influence, and prestige. Knights were beginning to emerge as the defining military elite of medieval Europe. Mounted warriors trained from childhood, believing honor existed somewhere between absolute courage and very expensive armor. For ambitious young nobles, Normandy offered opportunity. For everyone else, well, surviving each year counted as success. Across the Channel lay England. Unlike Normandy, England possessed an older sense of political unity. The Anglo-Saxon kingdoms that had once divided the island had gradually merged under powerful kings. Despite periodic Viking invasions, and there had certainly been enough of those to make coastal villagers nervous whenever unfamiliar sails appeared, the kingdom had developed sophisticated systems of taxation, administration, and law. England was wealthy. Its farmland produced abundance. Its monasteries housed priceless manuscripts. Its kings collected taxes more efficiently than many continental rulers could even imagine, which naturally made ambitious neighbors glance across the water and think, that looks valuable. The English Channel was less a barrier than a bridge. Merchants crossed regularly. Pilgrims traveled between shrines. Noble families intermarried. Politics ignored geography whenever convenient. This mattered enormously, because William's destiny would eventually become tangled with England's future through family connections, disputed promises, broken oaths, and enough competing claims to confuse even experienced medieval lawyers. Not that medieval lawyers were especially known for simplifying matters. Before we reach those famous events, however, we must meet William's parents. His father was Robert, Duke of Normandy. Robert possessed intelligence, courage, political ambition, and perhaps not the strongest commitment to predictable decision-making. Like many medieval rulers, Robert inherited power young. Like many medieval rulers, he spent much of his reign quarreling with relatives, neighboring lords, and occasionally his own supporters. Keeping everyone satisfied proved impossible. Someone always wanted more land. Someone else wanted greater influence. Someone undoubtedly believed they deserved your title instead. Running a duchy often resembled balancing upon a wooden bridge while everyone around you enthusiastically attempted to shake it. William's mother, however, came from a dramatically different background. Her name was Herleva. Legend describes her as the daughter of a tanner from the town of Falaise. Whether every detail survives accurately after centuries of storytelling remains uncertain, but contemporary accounts agree upon one essential point. She was not aristocracy. For Europe's highest nobility, this represented something close to scandal. One tradition claims Robert first noticed Herleva while she was washing clothes near a stream below Falaise Castle. Another insists he saw her dancing. Medieval chroniclers adored romantic stories almost as much as they enjoyed moral lessons, so separating fact from embellishment becomes difficult. Whatever truly happened, Robert chose Herleva as his companion. They never married. Their son William was born around 1027 or 1028. Immediately, whispers spread. Illegitimate. Bastard. Unfit. Children rarely choose the circumstances surrounding their birth. Adults, unfortunately, often punish them anyway. William grew up hearing those words. Some rivals used them openly. Others spoke politely in public before repeating them privately. Many noble families considered illegitimacy a permanent stain upon one's reputation regardless of personal ability. History would eventually demonstrate just how mistaken that assumption could become. Yet in those early years, nobody saw greatness. They saw vulnerability. A child standing outside traditional expectations. Still, Robert recognized William as his son. He acknowledged him publicly. He ensured the boy received education appropriate for nobility. He appears to have genuinely cared for his future. That decision changed European history. Because had Robert abandoned William entirely, England's story would likely unfold very differently. History sometimes pivots upon surprisingly intimate choices. A father recognizing his child. A promise kept. An inheritance protected. Or not. William spent his earliest years around Falaise Castle, perched dramatically upon rocky heights overlooking the surrounding countryside. From its walls, he could watch travelers winding through valleys below. Markets filled with merchants speaking different dialects. Farmers guiding oxen through fields according to seasons that seemed eternal. The castle itself wasn't yet the immense stone fortress tourists admire today. Much of early Norman military architecture relied upon timber. Wooden towers. Wooden halls. Wooden defenses. Effective enough, unless someone arrived carrying fire, which happened with uncomfortable frequency. Inside noble households, children matured quickly. William learned prayers in Latin before fully understanding their meaning. He watched warriors train with swords almost too heavy for ordinary men. He observed feasts where alliances formed over roasted meats and generous quantities of wine. He also learned silence. Listening carefully often mattered more than speaking, especially when surrounded by ambitious adults. Imagine being perhaps 7 years old while every conversation around you concerns inheritance, loyalty, revenge, and military campaigns. Childhood looked rather different in the 11th century. There were games, certainly. There was laughter. Yet beneath everything rested politics. Every friendship carried implications. Every marriage altered power. Every birth created potential rivals. And every unexpected death, well, that changed everything. In 1035, Robert made a remarkable decision. He announced his intention to undertake pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Pilgrimage represented one of medieval Christianity's highest expressions of devotion. Thousands traveled enormous distances seeking forgiveness, spiritual renewal, or fulfillment of sacred vows. The journey was extraordinarily dangerous. Bandits, disease, shipwrecks, exhaustion. Many pilgrims never returned. Robert almost certainly understood these risks. Before departing, he gathered Normandy's leading nobles. There, before witnesses, he did something astonishing. He declared young William, still only around 7 or 8 years old, as his heir. Imagine the expressions around the room. Some probably nodded respectfully. Others likely concealed alarm. A few may have begun quietly calculating alternative possibilities before Robert had even left the duchy. Supporting an illegitimate child as heir required loyalty. Waiting for circumstances to change required only patience. Robert departed anyway, south through France, across Italy, toward the Holy Land. He never returned. The Duke of Normandy died during the journey home, somewhere in Asia Minor. News traveled slowly. Weeks became months. Eventually confirmation reached Normandy. Their ruler was dead. His heir was a child, an illegitimate child. Suddenly, every ambitious noble recognized extraordinary opportunity. The wolves had scented weakness, and they were already moving. As darkness settles over medieval Normandy, candles flicker inside timber halls while distant dogs bark beyond wooden palisades. Somewhere a frightened young boy sleeps beneath guarded roofs, unaware that nearly every powerful man around him has begun making impossible calculations. Could they control him? Replace him? Remove him? History rarely announces the beginning of greatness with triumphant music. Sometimes it begins with whispers in dark corridors. Sometimes with closed doors. Sometimes with a child who has absolutely no idea how many people expect him not to survive another year. And as the cold Channel winds continue blowing across Normandy, carrying the smell of salt and rain through quiet valleys, William's true story is only just beginning. The child duke whom everyone expected to die. If you had wandered through Normandy during the winter after Duke Robert's death, you might not have noticed anything unusual at first. The market still opened with the sunrise. Church bells still echoed across the countryside. Monks still copied manuscripts by candlelight, pausing only when cramped fingers demanded a brief rest. Farmers still argued with stubborn oxen, and fishermen still complained about the weather, a tradition that has apparently survived every century since. Life, for most people, continued almost exactly as it had before. But beneath that ordinary rhythm, something dangerous had begun to unfold. Normandy was now ruled, at least in theory, by an 8-year-old boy. That sentence alone was enough to make half the nobility start sharpening their ambitions. William had inherited one of the richest duchies in Western Europe, but inheriting it did not mean controlling it. Medieval titles looked wonderfully impressive written on parchment. In reality, they only meant something if enough armed men agreed that they meant something. Power, in the 11th century, was astonishingly practical. If someone with 300 knights disagreed with your legal claim, they often became your legal claim. Young William quickly became the center of a political storm far larger than himself. Every noble family suddenly had questions. Could an illegitimate child really rule Normandy? Should another branch of the ducal family inherit instead? Would neighboring rulers take advantage of the situation? Could someone quietly arrange an unfortunate accident? Because, after all, children were terribly fragile. As if that thought had never occurred to anyone with a dagger. William himself probably understood very little at first. Imagine being 8 years old. One day your father leaves on what everyone calls a holy journey. Adults smile reassuringly. They tell you everything will be fine. Then months later the smiles disappear. The conversations stop whenever you enter the room. Servants avoid your eyes. Men in armor arrive at unusual hours. Doors begin locking at night. Nobody explains very much. Children are remarkably good at sensing fear long before they understand its cause. William would have felt it everywhere. His guardians certainly did. Robert had appointed several powerful men to protect his son and govern until he reached adulthood. On paper, it seemed sensible. Experienced nobles would preserve stability. The young duke would mature safely. Normandy would continue prospering. Reality, unfortunately, had neglected to read the plan. One by one, William's protectors began dying. Not peacefully, not naturally, violently. One guardian was murdered, another was ambushed, another disappeared from power altogether. Chroniclers describe an atmosphere so dangerous that simply remaining loyal to William became a potentially fatal career decision. It was almost as though protecting the boy carried a remarkably unhealthy life expectancy. Medieval politics possessed many occupational hazards. Loyalty ranked surprisingly high among them. One story survives from these years that captures the constant tension surrounding William's childhood. According to later accounts, assassins once entered the very chamber where the young duke slept. Only quick action by a loyal household member saved him. The servant hurried William from his bed in the darkness, carrying him through hidden passages and out into the night before the killers reached the room. Whether every detail is perfectly accurate matters less than what the story represents. People believed it. They believed because it matched the reality of William's world. His life was genuinely in danger. Repeatedly. Imagine trying to sleep knowing armed men guarded every door because someone might decide tonight was the ideal evening to eliminate you. Most children worry about monsters beneath the bed. William's monsters carried swords. The castles that sheltered him became moving fortresses. He rarely remained in one place for long. Trusted supporters shifted him from estate to estate, keeping potential enemies uncertain about his exact location. Travel itself was exhausting. Norman roads were little more than muddy tracks winding through forests and fields. Rain transformed them into rivers of thick clay. Winter froze them into uneven ridges. Summer covered travelers with choking dust. A journey of 30 miles could require an entire day, sometimes more. William spent much of his childhood moving across this uncertain landscape, surrounded by armed escorts who constantly watched tree lines, crossroads, and distant hills. Every unfamiliar rider prompted suspicion. Every approaching stranger invited questions. Friendship became a luxury. Caution became survival. Yet amid all this danger, William continued receiving the education expected of a noble heir. His tutors taught him prayers, Latin scripture, genealogies stretching back generations, the customs of feudal society, the responsibilities of lordship. Reading remained rare among warriors, though churchmen preserved learning with extraordinary dedication. William probably never became a scholar in the modern sense. He preferred action, administration, military organization, but he understood enough to appreciate the importance of educated advisors. An intelligent ruler does not necessarily know everything. He knows whom to ask. Meanwhile, Normandy itself seemed determined to test every ounce of the young duke's legitimacy. Powerful families ignored central authority. Private wars erupted between rival nobles. Castles multiplied across the countryside. Each local lord strengthened his own position, while ducal authority weakened. The duchy resembled a great tapestry whose threads had begun quietly unraveling. William stood at the center, still too young to repair it, too important to ignore, too vulnerable to command obedience. There must have been moments when loyal supporters questioned whether the experiment could succeed at all. Could this child genuinely survive long enough to become duke in more than name? History often feels inevitable looking backward. Living through it rarely does. Nobody in 1037 knew William would conquer England. Nobody imagined the Norman aristocracy would one day dominate lands from Scotland to Sicily. For all anyone knew, William might vanish from history before reaching his 15th birthday. It would hardly have surprised contemporaries. In fact, many probably expected exactly that. One of William's greatest advantages came from an unlikely source: the King of France. At first glance, this sounds rather odd. After all, Normandy technically formed part of the French kingdom. Its duke owed allegiance to the French king. Simple enough. Except medieval feudal relationships were never actually simple. The French monarchy itself remained comparatively weak. Royal authority barely extended beyond lands directly controlled by the king. Powerful dukes and counts often acted almost independently. Normandy was among the strongest. Its collapse into complete civil war threatened regional stability. King Henry I of France, therefore, had practical reasons for supporting young William. Not necessarily out of affection, certainly not from selfless generosity, but because a functioning Normandy suited French interests better than endless chaos. Politics has always excelled at producing unlikely partnerships. Henry occasionally intervened to help preserve William's position. His support discouraged some rebels. Not all. There were always those convinced they could seize power regardless. As William entered adolescence, something gradually became apparent. He was surviving. That alone was unexpected. Each birthday quietly disappointed his enemies. Each passing year made him stronger, taller, more experienced, more difficult to manipulate. Children eventually become adults. Conspirators often forget that inconvenient detail. Accounts from later years consistently describe William as physically impressive. Tall, broad-shouldered, powerfully built. He inherited the robust constitution of his Viking ancestors. While many nobles enjoyed tournaments and hunting, William approached physical training almost obsessively. Horsemanship, swordsmanship, hunting through dense forests, long days riding across difficult countryside. Strength mattered. Endurance mattered even more. Norman warfare demanded both. One contemporary remarked upon William's remarkable stamina. He could spend entire days in the saddle without complaint. He hunted relentlessly. He tolerated hardship that exhausted others. These qualities developed naturally from necessity. Comfort had rarely been an option during his childhood. There is something profoundly interesting about adversity. It breaks some people. It hardens others. William seemed to belong firmly in the second category. Every attempted betrayal taught caution. Every narrow escape encouraged vigilance. Every murdered guardian reinforced one lesson above all others. Trust carefully, very carefully. As evening settles over Normandy once again, mist gathers between ancient oak trees while castle fires glow against the darkness. Somewhere within those walls, the boy once dismissed as William the Bastard is no longer merely surviving. He is learning, watching, remembering every slight, every broken oath, every face that turned away when he needed loyalty most. The frightened child who inherited Normandy is slowly disappearing. In his place emerges a young man shaped by danger, sharpened by uncertainty, and possessed of a determination few yet recognize. His enemies still believe time favors them. They assume youth remains weakness. They mistake patience for helplessness. They could not know that within only a few years, this same young duke would take command of armies, crush rebellions, and begin forging one of the most disciplined military states in Europe. And when that transformation finally begins, the balance of power in Normandy, and eventually all of England, will never be the same. The young duke becomes a warrior. There comes a quiet moment in almost every great historical story when survival is no longer enough. For years, William had simply remained alive. That, by itself, had been a remarkable achievement. He had escaped assassins, outlived ambitious rivals, watched loyal guardians fall one after another, and grown from a frightened child into a determined young noble while half of Normandy seemed to be waiting for him to disappear. But a duke cannot rule forever as someone else's responsibility. Eventually, every child inherits adulthood. And in William's case, adulthood arrived carrying a sword. By the mid-1040s, Normandy remained deeply divided. The great lords had grown accustomed to governing themselves. Many had built private castles without permission. Others ignored ducal authority almost entirely. Local feuds had become ordinary life. Imagine dozens of powerful families, each convinced they knew how Normandy should be governed. Now imagine that none of them agreed with each other. It was rather like handing a kingdom to a room full of extremely confident people who had all brought their own armies. Peace was not especially likely. William was still only in his late teens. To modern eyes, that seems astonishingly young. But medieval society moved according to a different rhythm. Life expectancy was shorter. Responsibility arrived earlier. Kings sometimes commanded armies before reaching 20. Young nobles hunted wolves, negotiated alliances, and prepared for battle, while modern teenagers might still be worrying about school examinations. History rarely waited for anyone to feel ready. Neither did William's enemies. In 1047, the greatest challenge of his youth finally arrived. Several Norman nobles decided they had reached the limit of their patience, or perhaps the limit of William's usefulness. The rebellion formed quickly. One lord after another joined the conspiracy. Their goal was simple enough: remove William. Replace him with someone more convenient. Exactly how they intended to accomplish that depended on whom you asked. Some probably preferred imprisonment. Others almost certainly preferred something rather more permanent. Either way, William's reign appeared dangerously close to ending before it had truly begun. The young duke suddenly found himself facing experienced warriors who had spent decades mastering politics and warfare. This was not merely another assassination plot whispered in dark corridors. It was open rebellion. Normandy itself seemed to be breaking apart. William reacted with remarkable speed. Instead of hiding behind castle walls, he rode south to seek help from the one ally powerful enough to intervene decisively: King Henry I of France. The journey itself must have been exhausting. Picture William and a small escort galloping across muddy roads, pushing exhausted horses through forests and villages, while every hour increased the danger behind them. Rain clouds gathered overhead. Cold winds swept across open fields. The rebellion spread faster than messages could travel. There was no guarantee Henry would even agree to help. Fortunately for William, politics once again worked in his favor. The French king understood exactly what was at stake. A successful rebellion in Normandy could encourage unrest elsewhere. If great nobles discovered they could simply overthrow inconvenient rulers, the idea might become popular. Kings generally dislike ideas like that. Henry gathered an army. William gathered his loyal supporters. Together, they marched back toward Normandy. The rebels, perhaps expecting an easy victory against an isolated young duke, suddenly faced something considerably more intimidating. Two armies, one determined king, one determined duke, and very little room for negotiation. The two sides met near a village called Val es Dunes. Today, it is a peaceful landscape. Gentle hills, fields stretching beneath wide skies, quiet country roads. It requires some imagination to picture armored knights charging across those same meadows nearly 1,000 years ago. But on that day, the ground shook beneath hundreds of horses. Morning mist clung to the valleys. Banners snapped sharply in the wind. Priests moved among nervous soldiers, offering blessings to men who suspected they might soon require them rather urgently. The smell would have been unforgettable. Wet earth, leather, sweating horses, smoke from campfires, freshly sharpened steel. Fear. People rarely mention that last one. Every army carries it, even victorious armies, especially before the battle begins. William, perhaps 19 years old, prepared to command men in the greatest test of his life. He had spent years learning warfare. Now he would discover whether those lessons meant anything. Medieval battles often dissolved into confusion almost immediately. Plans disappeared beneath clouds of dust. Messages failed to reach commanders. Individual acts of courage or panic could transform entire engagements. Despite centuries of romantic paintings, battles were noisy, chaotic, exhausting affairs. Men shouted because they literally could not hear each other. Steel rang against steel. Horses screamed when wounded. The air filled with arrows, mud, and splintered wood. There was very little elegance about it. Only survival. The fighting at Val es Dunes proved fierce. Norman cavalry thundered across open ground, lances lowered. Infantry struggled to hold formation. Some rebels fought with desperate determination. Others lost heart once momentum shifted against them. William himself fought in the thick of the action. Not from a comfortable hilltop. Not safely behind the lines. Like many medieval rulers, he believed leadership demanded personal risk. If his soldiers bled, so would he. At one point, rebel forces broke and fled. Many attempted to escape across the River Orne. It ended disastrously. Heavy armor and swift currents make unfortunate companions. Numerous fleeing knights drowned before reaching safety. Others were cut down while trying desperately to cross. By sunset, William had won. Not merely survived. Won. It is difficult to overstate the importance of that victory. Before Val es Dunes, William was a young duke many nobles tolerated. After Val es Dunes, he became a ruler capable of defeating rebellion. The difference was enormous. Success has a curious way of attracting loyalty. People who had hesitated suddenly rediscovered their enthusiasm. Former doubters became remarkably supportive. Those who had quietly waited to see which side would prevail now spoke confidently about having always believed in William. Human nature, it seems, has changed rather less than technology. The victory also transformed William himself. He had crossed an invisible threshold. No longer the child protected by others. Now he protected Normandy. No longer merely inheriting authority, now earning it. The lessons of his dangerous childhood had combined with battlefield experience to create something new. Confidence. Not arrogance. Not yet. Simply the certainty that he could overcome extraordinary odds. And confidence, once reinforced by success, becomes difficult to remove. William wasted little time strengthening his position. Across Normandy, unauthorized castles were dismantled. Rebellious nobles surrendered lands. Private warfare faced increasing restrictions. Order slowly returned. Not perfect order. That would have been asking rather a lot of medieval Europe. But better. Much better. William also revealed another characteristic that would define his reign. He remembered loyalty. Those who had stood beside him during difficult years received rewards. Land. Titles. Influence. Those who had betrayed him, discovered forgiveness possessed very definite limits. It was a practical system. Support William, and your future improved. Oppose him, and life became considerably less pleasant. Simple rules often work best. As Normandy stabilized, another remarkable change unfolded. The duchy itself became one of Europe's most efficient military societies. William encouraged discipline, training, organization. Knights served more systematically. Castles strengthened strategic positions. Administration improved. Normandy began resembling less a collection of competing warlords and more a unified state. This transformation would later prove absolutely essential, because conquering England required more than courage. It required preparation. William did not know exactly when opportunity would come, but he intended to be ready. Away from politics and warfare, another chapter of his life quietly developed. It involved neither castles nor battlefields. Instead, a young noblewoman named Matilda. Matilda of Flanders belonged to one of Europe's most distinguished families. Intelligent, well-educated, connected to powerful rulers across the continent. She represented exactly the sort of marriage that strengthened dynasties. There was only one small complication. William was illegitimate. Some members of Matilda's family reportedly objected strongly. One later story claims Matilda herself initially rejected William. Another famously, and perhaps somewhat dramatically, claims William rode to her town, pulled her from her horse by her braids, threw her into the mud, and rode away. Whether that actually happened remains doubtful. Medieval chroniclers occasionally confused history with entertainment. Still, the tale survived because people already believed William possessed extraordinary determination. Eventually, the marriage went ahead, and surprisingly, it became one of medieval Europe's more successful royal partnerships. Matilda was no passive observer. She governed Normandy during William's absences, managed estates, raised their children, provided political stability that many rulers envied. Together, they would have numerous sons and daughters, creating alliances across Europe. The young duke who had once hidden from assassins was now building a dynasty. It must have seemed almost unbelievable to anyone who remembered the frightened boy fleeing through castle corridors. Night settles once more across Normandy. The great halls grow quieter as servants extinguish candles one by one. Rain taps softly against wooden shutters. Somewhere beyond the walls, horses graze beneath a sky filled with unfamiliar stars, exactly as they did 1,000 years ago. William walks the ramparts of his castle, looking across lands that are finally beginning to obey him. For the first time in his life, perhaps he can imagine a future measured not in weeks or months, but in decades. He has defeated rebellion, secured his duchy, married wisely, built loyal friendships. Everything, at last, seems to be falling into place, which, as history gently reminds us, is often the precise moment fate introduces something entirely unexpected. Across the English Channel, an aging king without children sits upon another throne. His name is Edward. His health is beginning to fail, and when he dies, 3 powerful men will each believe England belongs to them. One of those men is William of Normandy. The sea that has separated England and Normandy for centuries is about to become the stage for one of the most famous invasions in human history. The king without an heir. By the early 1050s, William of Normandy had accomplished something that few people would have believed possible 20 years earlier. He had survived. That simple statement carried far more weight than it might seem. He had survived assassination attempts, noble rebellions, political betrayals, and the endless uncertainty of growing up in one of the most dangerous courts in Europe. His duchy was becoming orderly. His nobles, while never completely trustworthy, this was still medieval aristocracy, after all, had largely accepted his authority. For the first time in William's life, he could begin looking beyond Normandy's borders. And when he looked north across the English Channel, he saw something extraordinary. An opportunity. The channel itself seemed deceptively peaceful. Fishing boats drifted over silver water. Merchant vessels sailed between Rouen, Caen, and the ports of southern England, carrying wine, wool, timber, salt, and stories from distant lands. Seagulls wheeled overhead, crying into the wind just as they had for centuries. From the cliffs of Normandy, England was invisible, but it never felt far away. On clear days, sailors spoke of crossing the channel in less than a day if the winds were kind. If they were not, well, the sea had a habit of reminding everyone who truly ruled those waters. Unlike modern travelers, medieval sailors could not simply check tomorrow's forecast. They looked at clouds. They watched birds. They sniffed the wind. Then they prayed. Quite a lot. Across that narrow stretch of water ruled a man named Edward. History remembers him as Edward the Confessor. Edward was unlike many medieval kings. He enjoyed hunting, certainly. He appreciated fine churches. He valued ceremony and religion perhaps more than warfare. In another age, he might have been remembered primarily as a deeply devout ruler who spent his life encouraging peace. Unfortunately for Edward, history had other plans. His greatest problem was astonishingly simple. He had no children. Today that might create awkward family conversations during holiday gatherings. In the 11th century, it threatened entire kingdoms. Without a clear heir, every ambitious noble immediately began asking dangerous questions. Who comes next? Who has the strongest claim? Who has the biggest army? Notice how quickly those questions tend to escalate. Edward himself had spent much of his early life in Normandy. His family had fled England during earlier Danish invasions, and the young prince grew up among Norman nobles, speaking French as comfortably as Old English. He knew William, perhaps not intimately, but certainly well enough. This connection would later become one of history's greatest political arguments. Because William insisted that Edward had promised him the English throne. Whether that promise truly happened, that is where history becomes wonderfully complicated. Some Norman chroniclers insist Edward formally named William as his successor. English chroniclers are rather less enthusiastic about this version. Modern historians remain divided. It is entirely possible Edward made encouraging remarks without realizing how seriously William would interpret them. Or perhaps he genuinely intended William to inherit. Or perhaps later writers quietly improved the story after William had already conquered England. Victorious rulers often enjoy remarkably helpful historians. Regardless, William believed, or at least publicly claimed, that Edward had chosen him. And belief, in politics, can become almost as powerful as fact. Meanwhile, another figure was steadily becoming the most powerful noble in England. His name was Harold Godwinson. If William represented Norman ambition, Harold represented Anglo-Saxon experience. He was tall, confident, intelligent, and enormously wealthy. As Earl of Wessex, Harold controlled vast estates across southern England. He commanded loyal warriors. His family occupied many of the kingdom's highest offices. If anyone already looked like England's next king, it was Harold. Yet Harold's own family history was hardly peaceful. His father, Godwin, had risen from relative obscurity to become the kingdom's most influential noble. Power attracted enemies. Court politics became increasingly bitter. Edward and Godwin frequently disagreed, sometimes dramatically. At one point, the entire Godwin family went into exile before eventually returning stronger than ever. Apparently, medieval politics subscribed wholeheartedly to the principle that if at first you fail, come back with more supporters. By the mid-1050s, Harold had become Edward's closest advisor. The aging king increasingly relied upon him to lead armies, negotiate disputes, and maintain order throughout England. Harold proved remarkably capable. He defeated Welsh rulers, managed rebellious nobles, protected England's southern coast. Many English nobles quietly assumed the succession question had already answered itself. When Edward died, Harold would naturally become king. Simple. Except nothing about 1066 would be simple. Far to the north, Another ambitious ruler watched events with growing interest. His name was Harold Hardrada. Few medieval rulers possessed a nickname quite as impressive. Hardrada roughly translates to hard ruler, which sounds considerably more intimidating than, say, moderately reasonable administrator. Harold Hardrada had lived an extraordinary life. Before becoming king, he fought across Eastern Europe, served in the elite Varangian Guard of the Byzantine Empire, accumulated immense wealth, commanded mercenaries, survived countless battles. He regarded England as another prize waiting to be claimed. Suddenly, three extraordinary men believed destiny favored them. William, Harold, three rulers, one throne. It sounds almost theatrical. History occasionally enjoys good dramatic structure. Back in Normandy, William continued strengthening every aspect of his duchy. He expanded castles, improved roads, encouraged monasteries, organized taxation. Most importantly, he built relationships with knights whose loyalty depended upon success. Norman cavalry had become among Europe's finest. Heavy horses thundered across training fields. Young nobles practiced with lance and sword from childhood. Armor improved year after year. Military discipline became almost a cultural obsession. Imagine visiting one of William's training grounds. The morning air carries the smell of damp grass. Knights lower long ashwood lances beneath brightly colored banners. Instructors shout corrections over the pounding of hooves. Metal rings against shields. War horses snort clouds of steam into cool autumn air. Nearby, blacksmiths repair helmets dented during practice. Leatherworkers stitch reins. Fletchers bind feathers to fresh arrows. Preparing for war employed entire communities. A knight required far more than courage. He required horses, armor, weapons, servants, food, replacement equipment. War was astonishingly expensive. William understood logistics perhaps better than many of his contemporaries. An army marched on preparation long before anyone coined the famous phrase. Still, despite all this organization, William could not simply invade England whenever he pleased. He needed legitimacy, at least by medieval standards. Conquest alone invited resistance. A rightful claim encouraged support. Therefore, every rumor from Edward's court mattered. Every diplomatic mission, every whispered conversation, every possible promise. One episode would later become absolutely central to William's argument. Around 1064, or perhaps 1065, historians still debate the exact date. Harold Godwinson crossed the English Channel. Exactly why remains uncertain. Some accounts suggest diplomacy. Others mention family matters. Still others suspect political negotiations. Whatever the reason, Harold's journey quickly became disastrous. Storms drove his ship onto the coast of northern France. He was captured by a local count. Yes, captured. Because medieval travel occasionally resembled a sequence of unfortunate misunderstandings interrupted by armed robbery. William intervened. He secured Harold's release. Then, according to Norman accounts, Harold accompanied him on military campaigns in Brittany. The two men reportedly fought side by side, shared counsels, built mutual respect, at least for a while. Then came the famous oath. Norman writers insist Harold swore upon holy relics to support William's claim to the English throne. They describe an elaborate ceremony. Sacred bones of saints concealed beneath cloth. Hands placed solemnly upon the reliquaries. Promises spoken before God himself. Only afterward did Harold supposedly discover exactly what lay beneath his hands. If true, it was one of medieval history's greatest practical jokes. Also one of its most politically useful moments. English sources, however, barely mention such an oath. Some ignore it entirely. Others describe events differently. Modern historians continue debating whether Harold freely swore allegiance, acted under pressure, or whether Norman chroniclers later emphasized the story to justify William's invasion. The truth remains frustratingly elusive. History, unfortunately, rarely preserves courtroom-quality evidence. It preserves memories, arguments, biases, and people writing decades later with very definite opinions. Whatever truly happened, William believed he now possessed both a promise from Edward and an oath from Harold. From his perspective, England was already his. He simply had not collected it yet. As another winter settles across northern Europe, Snow dusts Norman rooftops while icy winds sweep over the channel. In Westminster, England's aging king grows weaker. His court becomes quieter. Physicians offer herbs. Priests offer prayers. Nobles quietly calculate futures they pretend not to be considering. Across the sea in Normandy, William continues drilling soldiers, strengthening castles, and watching England with patient eyes. He has spent his entire life waiting to survive, waiting to rule, waiting for destiny to reveal itself. Soon, that waiting will end. Within only a few years, one old king's final breath will trigger perhaps the most famous succession crisis in medieval history. 3 men will claim one crown. Thousands will sail toward war. And on a lonely hill near Hastings, the future of England will be decided before sunset. The year the world changed, 1066 begins. History has a peculiar habit of allowing decades to pass quietly, and then compressing enough drama for an entire century into a single year. For England, that year was 1066. Even people who remember very little about medieval history often know those 4 numbers. Schoolchildren memorize them. Historians return to them endlessly. The number has become almost mythical, standing alongside dates like 1492 or 1945. Yet the people living through 1066 had no idea they were stepping into one of the most famous years in European history. For them, it began like every other winter. Cold rain swept across England. Smoke curled from village chimneys. Oxen pulled heavy plows through frozen fields whenever the ground allowed it. Church bells marked the passing hours, just as they always had. Life felt ordinary. History often arrives disguised as another Tuesday. King Edward the Confessor was dying. By late December of 1065, the aging king had become increasingly frail. The magnificent new Westminster Abbey, which Edward had spent years building, had finally been completed. It should have been the crowning achievement of his reign. Instead, Edward was too ill to attend its dedication. Imagine the irony. You devote years to creating one of the greatest churches in England, and miss the celebration because you're lying in bed. History has never been especially considerate. Within the royal palace beside the abbey, servants moved quietly through shadowed corridors. Candles burned day and night. Physicians mixed herbal remedies whose effectiveness depended somewhere between genuine medical knowledge and hopeful optimism. Priests recited prayers in low voices. Outside, the River Thames flowed steadily through the winter landscape, entirely unconcerned with royal succession. Edward knew the end was approaching. The great question hanging over every conversation was painfully obvious. Who would inherit England? There was still no son, no universally accepted heir, only competing expectations. Some later chroniclers claim Edward named Harold Godwinson on his deathbed. Others suggest his final words have been interpreted rather creatively over the centuries. Deathbed statements are notoriously difficult historical evidence. People remember what they expect to hear. Sometimes they remember what they wish had been said. Whatever happened inside Edward's chamber, one fact is certain. On the 5th of January, 1066, the king died. England held its breath. The following day moved with astonishing speed. The Great Council of England, the Witenagemot, met to decide the succession. Unlike many continental kingdoms, England did not automatically pass the crown from father to eldest son. The council possessed considerable influence. Practical leadership mattered. Military ability mattered. Support from powerful nobles mattered. Harold possessed all 3. By the end of the day, Harold Godwinson was king. The coronation took place almost immediately inside Westminster Abbey. There was no time for lengthy debate. England needed certainty, or at least the appearance of certainty. Imagine the atmosphere inside the abbey. Winter sunlight filtered weakly through high windows. Incense drifted beneath the stone arches. Choirs sang Latin hymns that echoed through the vast building. Nobles stood shoulder to shoulder beneath richly colored banners. Bishops carried sacred vessels crafted from gold and silver. Somewhere outside, ordinary Londoners crowded together, waiting for news. Inside, Harold knelt. The crown was placed upon his head. The archbishop pronounced the ancient blessings. England had a new king. For perhaps a few hours, everything seemed settled. Then the messengers began riding. Across England, horses thundered along muddy roads. North toward York, west toward Wales, south toward the Channel, across the sea toward Normandy. Every rider carried essentially the same message. Edward is dead. Harold is king. Those words would change the course of history. When the news reached Normandy, William was furious. Perhaps furious is too gentle. He believed England had been stolen from him. In William's mind, Edward had promised him the crown. Harold had sworn to support that promise. Now Harold had accepted the throne himself. To William, this was not merely politics. It was betrayal. Personal betrayal. Medieval society placed extraordinary importance on oaths. Promises sworn before God carried immense spiritual weight. Breaking such an oath endangered not only one's reputation, but one's soul. At least in theory. In practice, politics occasionally proved more persuasive than theology. William reportedly reacted with cold determination rather than uncontrolled anger. That suited his personality. He had learned patience during childhood. He had survived by thinking several moves ahead. Instead of rushing blindly toward England, he began preparing carefully. If he invaded, he intended to win. Nothing less. Yet William was not the only claimant preparing for action. Far to the north, Harold Hardrada also received the news. The old Viking tradition had never entirely disappeared from Scandinavia. England remained enormously wealthy. Its crown remained tempting. Harold believed he possessed a legitimate claim through earlier agreements between Scandinavian rulers. Whether England agreed was another matter entirely. Still, kings rarely asked permission before invading. Harold immediately began gathering ships. Across Norway's icy fjords, craftsmen felled great trees. Shipbuilders shaped long planks with broad axes. Blacksmiths forged thousands of rivets. Sails were repaired. Weapons sharpened. Old warriors answered the call once more. Many had spent decades fighting across Europe. Some had sailed with Harold during his adventures in the Mediterranean. Others simply saw another chance for glory. Or wealth. Preferably both. England now faced threats from two directions. South and north. King Harold had scarcely finished his coronation before discovering he might soon need to defend his kingdom against two of Europe's finest military commanders. Not exactly an ideal beginning to a reign. Meanwhile, William understood something crucial. Invading England required more than soldiers. It required legitimacy. He needed Europe to see his campaign not as naked conquest, but as justice. So he turned toward the most influential figure in Western Christendom, the Pope. William sent envoys to Rome. They presented his case. Edward had promised him the throne. Harold had broken a sacred oath. England had fallen into the hands of a perjurer. Whether every detail convinced everyone remains uncertain. But William's diplomacy succeeded brilliantly. The Pope expressed support for William's claim. According to Norman sources, William even received a sacred papal banner to carry during the invasion. That banner mattered enormously. It transformed the campaign from a simple dynastic dispute into something approaching a holy cause. At least from the Norman perspective. William could now tell his followers they fought not only for land and glory, but with God's blessing. It was excellent recruitment material. Recruitment itself became one of William's greatest achievements. Normandy alone could not provide enough men, so invitations spread across Europe. Knights came from Brittany, Flanders, Maine, Picardy, even more distant regions. Some sought land. Others wanted adventure. Many simply trusted William's leadership. Imagine arriving at the Norman camps during the spring of 1066. Everywhere there was movement. Carpenters chopped enormous oak trees. Sawdust filled the air. Hundreds of shipwrights worked side by side, shaping hull after hull. The sound never stopped. Axes, hammers, adzes, voices calling measurements across crowded workshops. It resembled an industrial project centuries before the Industrial Revolution. An entire fleet was being built almost from nothing. Some chroniclers claimed nearly 700 ships. Others estimated even more. The exact number remains uncertain. What is certain is that the scale was extraordinary. Wood disappeared into shipyards and emerged as vessels designed to carry horses across the sea. That alone was astonishing. Transporting cavalry by ship demanded remarkable planning. Each horse required food, water, space, careful handling. A frightened warhorse aboard a crowded ship could become everyone's problem remarkably quickly. William's logistical preparations revealed perhaps his greatest strength. He thought about details. Victory rarely belongs only to the bravest commander. Often it belongs to the best organizer. Throughout the summer, thousands of soldiers gathered near the Norman coast. Canvas tents spread across grassy hillsides. Blacksmiths repaired armor from sunrise until darkness. Women baked bread in enormous communal ovens. Merchants arrived hoping to profit from hungry armies. Priests celebrated Mass beneath temporary wooden shelters. Children chased one another between wagons, blissfully unaware they were playing beside one of history's greatest invasion forces. And then, everyone waited. Because the wind refused to cooperate. The channel could not simply be crossed whenever convenient. The prevailing winds blew from the wrong direction. William's entire army sat watching the sea. Day after day, week after week. Imagine the frustration. Thousands of men ready. Hundreds of ships prepared. Horses fed. Weapons polished. Morale slowly fading beneath endless delays. The weather had become William's greatest enemy. And unlike rebellious nobles, there was no one to negotiate with. As summer slowly turned toward autumn, anxious eyes remained fixed upon the restless waters of the English Channel. No one could yet know that the winds delaying William would soon delay him for exactly long enough to change everything. Because far to the north, another fleet was already approaching England. The first invasion of 1066 was about to begin, and King Harold would be forced into one of the most exhausting military campaigns in English history. A desperate race from one end of the kingdom to the other, against time, fate, and two extraordinary enemies who were unknowingly helping each other. The storm from the north. If history sometimes resembles a carefully written novel, then the autumn of 1066 is the chapter where every storyline suddenly begins racing toward the same destination. William waited in Normandy. Harold ruled in England. Harold Hardrada sailed from Norway. 3 remarkable men, 3 armies, 1 kingdom, and none of them could yet see how closely their fates had become intertwined. Summer slowly faded into autumn. Across southern England, King Harold Godwinson stood watch along the coastline. His army stretched across the southern counties, waiting for William's invasion. Day after day, soldiers stared across the channel. Nothing. Only waves. Only gulls. Only the endless rhythm of the sea. Waiting is one of the least glamorous parts of warfare. It is also one of the most exhausting. Imagine sleeping in temporary camps for weeks. Armor growing rusty in the damp air. Food supplies shrinking. Harvest season approaching. Thousands of farmers had left their fields to answer the king's call. Every extra week away meant crops remained uncollected. Families grew anxious. Winter was not far away. Harold faced an impossible choice. If he kept the army together indefinitely, England's harvest, and therefore its food supply, might suffer. If he dismissed them, William might sail the very next morning. Kings rarely receive perfect options. Eventually, necessity made the decision for him. In early September, Harold released much of his army. The harvest simply could not wait any longer. Men returned home carrying spears over tired shoulders. Fields once again filled with workers instead of warriors. England relaxed. Only a little, but enough. William, still trapped by unfavorable winds, could do nothing except continue waiting. Nature remained stubbornly impartial. Far to the north, however, another fleet had found exactly the wind it needed. King Harold Hardrada gathered one of the largest Viking fleets ever assembled. Longships slipped from Norwegian fjords like dark arrows. Hundreds of sleek vessels cut through cold northern waters. Their striped sails caught strong autumn winds. Oars dipped rhythmically into the sea. The old Viking age, which many historians consider nearly over by this point, prepared for one final magnificent performance. Standing aboard his flagship, Harold must have felt history surrounding him. He had spent decades fighting across Europe. He had served emperors, won kingdoms, accumulated wealth beyond imagination. Now, nearing 50 years old, an advanced age for an active medieval warrior, he sought one last great prize: England. Beside him sailed another man whose presence made the invasion even more dangerous. Tostig Godwinson, Harold's own brother. Family disagreements can become awkward. This one escalated into a full-scale foreign invasion. Tostig had once ruled northern England but lost his earldom after widespread rebellion. Feeling betrayed by Harold, he sought revenge. And if revenge happened to involve helping a Norwegian king conquer England, well, so be it. History contains remarkably few family arguments that reached this level. The Norwegian fleet crossed the North Sea. Autumn storms battered the ships. Cold spray soaked every sailor. Gray clouds pressed low over the water. Yet the longships continued relentlessly southward. Eventually, they entered the great estuaries of northeastern England. Villagers watched in horror as unfamiliar sails appeared on the horizon. Long, narrow ships. Dragon-headed prows. Hundreds of them. For many English communities, it must have felt as though the Viking Age had suddenly returned. Church bells rang in alarm. Messengers mounted horses. Smoke rose from signal fires. The north was under attack. Harold Hardrada landed without serious opposition. His experienced army moved inland with remarkable confidence. English forces under the Earls Edwin and Morcar hurried to intercept the invaders. The two armies met near the village of Fulford. The landscape there remains peaceful today. Gentle fields, quiet rivers, open countryside. It hardly suggests the violence that unfolded in September 1066. The English attempted to block Harold's advance. For a time, the battle remained evenly matched. Then Norwegian experience began telling. Hardrada's veterans had fought from Russia to Sicily. Many had survived dozens of campaigns. Their discipline gradually overwhelmed the English defenders. Lines broke. Men fled. By evening, the Norwegians had won a decisive victory. York, one of England's greatest cities, lay vulnerable. Within days, local leaders agreed to surrender. Everything appeared to be going Harold's way. He probably believed the hardest part was over. History, however, delights in overconfidence. Nearly 200 miles to the south, Harold received astonishing news. The invasion had come. Just, not from the direction anyone expected. Imagine the messenger arriving after days of desperate riding. Horse covered in mud. Face exhausted. Voice almost gone. The Norwegians have landed. For a brief moment, Harold must have stared in disbelief. William remained in Normandy, yet England was already under attack. There was no time to hesitate. Harold gathered every available soldier. His elite household warriors, the famous housecarls, prepared immediately. These men represented the finest infantry in England. Tall, heavily armored, disciplined, each carried the terrifying Danish axe. Its long handle allowed enormous power. One well-placed blow could shatter shields or split helmets. Modern films often exaggerate medieval weapons. The Danish axe requires very little exaggeration. It was genuinely terrifying. Harold ordered a forced march north. What followed remains one of the greatest military movements in English history. Nearly 200 miles. In roughly 4 days. On foot. With armor. Through late September weather. Picture the army moving continuously. Morning mist. Afternoon rain. Cold nights beneath open skies. Boots sinking into muddy roads. Feet blistering. Muscles aching. Yet they kept marching. Hour after hour. Village after village. The king himself remained with them, sharing their hardships, setting the pace. Many historians still marvel at the achievement. Even modern soldiers carrying lighter equipment would find such a march demanding. Harold's determination astonished everyone, including his enemies. Meanwhile, Harold Hardrada grew comfortable. Too comfortable. After Fulford, the Norwegian king expected negotiations rather than immediate battle. He arranged to receive hostages near a small bridge east of York. The place became known forever as Stamford Bridge. On the morning of September 25th, Norwegian soldiers gathered casually. Many had left portions of their armor behind aboard the ships. The day felt unusually warm. Some chroniclers mention the sunshine. Others describe a pleasant autumn morning. Hardly ideal weather for unexpected disaster. The Norwegians waited. Instead of hostages, an English army appeared. At first, disbelief. Then confusion. Then absolute shock. Harold had marched north far faster than anyone believed possible. The English banners emerged over distant hills. Thousands of warriors. Weapons gleaming. Battle lines forming. Hardrada suddenly realized England had not surrendered. England had arrived. One famous story tells of a lone Norwegian warrior defending the narrow bridge against the advancing English. Armed with a great axe, he reportedly held back dozens of attackers. Again and again he struck, preventing the English from crossing. Legend claims 40 men fell before him. Perhaps more. Eventually, According to tradition, an English soldier floated beneath the bridge in a barrel and thrust a spear upward through the wooden planks. The giant fell. Whether every detail is true hardly matters. The story captures the spirit of medieval heroism. One determined individual delaying an entire army. Reality and legend often become close friends after great battles. Once across the bridge, Harold launched his attack. The fighting proved brutal. The English housecarls advanced steadily behind overlapping shields. Their axes rose and fell with dreadful precision. Norwegian warriors fought fiercely despite lacking much of their armor. King Harold Hardrada himself entered the battle wearing a blue tunic. Towering above many of his men, he inspired them by personal example. Then fate intervened. An arrow struck him in the throat. The great Viking king collapsed. One moment leading his army. The next, gone. Nearly 30 years of extraordinary military achievement ended in a single heartbeat. Leadership passed briefly to Tostig. Harold offered his brother one final chance. Surrender. Receive peace. Tostig refused. He asked only what Harold Hardrada would receive. According to later tradition, Harold answered calmly, 7 feet of English ground. Or perhaps a little more, because he is taller than most men. Dark humor has existed for a very long time. The battle continued. Fresh Norwegian reinforcements eventually arrived from the ships, but exhaustion and confusion had already taken their toll. By afternoon, the invasion collapsed. Hardrada was dead. Tostig was dead. Thousands of Norwegian soldiers lay scattered across the battlefield. The fleet that had arrived with perhaps 300 ships required only around 24 to carry the survivors home. The Viking Age had effectively reached its final chapter. As evening settled over Stamford Bridge, silence slowly replaced the noise of battle. Broken shields littered the grass. Discarded helmets caught the fading sunlight. Crows circled overhead, arriving with grim punctuality. Harold had achieved one of the greatest victories of his life. England was safe, or so it seemed. His exhausted soldiers rested beside cooking fires. Many believed the campaign had ended. They had marched farther than almost any medieval army. Defeated one of Europe's greatest warriors. Saved the kingdom. Surely now they could finally go home. Then another messenger arrived. He had ridden almost without stopping from the south. His horse was nearly spent. His face carried the unmistakable expression of someone bringing terrible news. The wind over the English Channel had finally changed. William's fleet was at sea, and while Harold celebrated in northern England, thousands of Norman soldiers were already sailing toward the beaches of Sussex. The greatest battle in English history was now only days away. The crossing of the Channel. There are moments in history when success depends not on courage, not on strategy, not even on leadership, but on something as simple and unpredictable as the direction of the wind. For nearly 2 months, William had waited on the Norman coast. His army was ready. His ships were ready. His horses were ready. Only the sea refused to cooperate. Every morning, sailors studied the waves. Every evening, captains scanned the horizon. Priests offered prayers. Merchants grew impatient. Soldiers polished weapons that had already been polished far too many times. An invasion force cannot wait forever. Food disappears. Morale fades. Disease begins to spread. William understood all of this. Yet there was nothing he could do except wait. Sometimes, even the greatest conquerors discover that they are not in command. The weather is. The Norman army had gathered near the mouth of the River Dives and later moved towards St. Valery-sur-Somme, where better conditions offered one final chance to sail. Imagine the enormous camp stretching along the coast. Thousands of canvas tents rippled in the breeze. Hundreds of ships rested in sheltered water. Blacksmiths hammered iron from sunrise until darkness. Carpenters repaired wagon wheels and strengthened masts. Priests celebrated Mass beneath temporary wooden chapels. Everywhere there was motion. Everywhere there was anticipation. The smell alone must have been unforgettable. Salt from the sea. Fresh-cut timber. Horse sweat. Smoke from countless cooking fires. Tar warming beneath the afternoon sun. Leather. Wet wool. It was the scent of an army preparing to gamble everything. William himself remained remarkably calm. Contemporary writers consistently describe him as a man who rarely allowed emotion to dictate decisions. He listened. He planned. He inspected every detail personally. He understood something many commanders forget. An invasion can fail before the first battle ever begins. Lose your horses during the crossing. You lose your cavalry. Lose your supplies. Your army starves. Land in the wrong place. Everything changes. Preparation was victory's first battlefield. Then, at last, the wind shifted. Perhaps it happened during the night. Perhaps just before dawn. Sailors noticed first. Flags hanging lazily suddenly stirred. The surface of the channel changed. Experienced captains looked toward one another. Then toward William. The impossible had become possible. The fleet could sail. Excitement swept through the camp like fire through dry grass. Men shouted. Bells rang. Orders echoed from ship to ship. Ropes were untied. Anchors raised. Horses carefully led aboard specially prepared transports. The great invasion had finally begun. After months of waiting, everything happened at once. Crossing the English Channel in the 11th century was not a comfortable voyage. Even in favorable weather, the sea remained unpredictable. Wooden ships rose and fell over gray waves. Salt spray soaked soldiers almost immediately. Many men, despite being experienced warriors, became violently seasick. It turns out courage offers very little protection against motion sickness. Some knights probably spent the journey wondering whether conquering England was truly worth this particular experience. The horses disliked it even more. War horses are magnificent on land. At sea, not so much. Handlers worked constantly to calm frightened animals. Every loud crash of waves against wooden hulls risked panic. A single terrified horse could injure itself or everyone nearby. The crossing demanded patience from everyone aboard. Fortunately for William, the weather remained unusually favorable. The fleet crossed during the night of September 27th and into the morning of September 28th. Hundreds of sails moved together across the moonlit water. It must have been an astonishing sight. Imagine standing on the English coast before sunrise. The sea appears empty. Then, slowly, dark shapes emerge from the mist. One ship, then another, then 10, then hundreds. An entire forest of masts advancing across the water. For coastal villagers, it must have looked almost unreal. One charming story tells us William's own ship became separated from the rest of the fleet during the crossing. At dawn, he reportedly looked around and found himself almost alone. Imagine that moment. You are attempting one of history's greatest invasions. You glance behind you. Your enormous fleet has disappeared. Not ideal. William, according to chroniclers, remained perfectly composed. He calmly ate breakfast, requested more wine, asked whether anyone could see the other ships. Eventually, they appeared on the horizon. The invasion continued. Whether every detail happened exactly that way is uncertain, but the story reflects William's reputation. Calm under pressure, patient, confident, almost impossible to rattle. The Norman fleet landed near Pevensey on England's southern coast. Remarkably, no English army waited. The beaches were nearly deserted. William had arrived at precisely the right moment. Harold was still hundreds of miles away in Yorkshire, celebrating victory over Harold Hardrada. History had presented William with an extraordinary opportunity. His soldiers disembarked rapidly. Archers first, infantry next. Finally, the cavalry. Horses stumbled onto English soil after their exhausting journey. Many immediately rolled in the grass, apparently delighted to be anywhere that did not float. One can hardly blame them. The Normans immediately began constructing defensive positions. They assembled a temporary wooden castle at Pevensey. Within days, another fortification rose at nearby Hastings. William had no intention of being trapped on the coast. He needed secure bases, supply depots, places from which his army could operate safely. Even before meeting Harold, William was already building the foundations of Norman England. Literally, the surrounding countryside suddenly found itself at the center of world history. Farmers harvesting autumn crops looked up to see foreign soldiers marching through familiar fields. Church bells rang desperately. Smoke drifted upward as Norman foraging parties collected food. Some villages surrendered peacefully. Others resisted. A few burned. William generally preferred controlled discipline. An undisciplined army destroys the very land it hopes to rule. Still, thousands of hungry soldiers consume astonishing quantities of food. Bread, grain, livestock, ale, firewood. Everything disappeared quickly. For ordinary English villagers, the invasion must have felt overwhelming. Yesterday, the greatest concern had been finishing the harvest before winter. Today, foreign knights rode through the fields. William now faced a delicate problem. He wanted Harold to come south. The longer Harold remained in northern England, the stronger William became. Every passing day allowed fresh supplies to arrive, more defensive works to be completed, more local reconnaissance, more opportunities to secure allies. So William began raiding the surrounding countryside. Not randomly, strategically. The destruction sent a message. Come and fight. Protect your kingdom. Face me. It was brutal, but effective. Harold could hardly ignore devastation so close to London. Far to the north, Harold received the news he had dreaded. William had landed. The messenger probably reached him only days after Stamford Bridge. Imagine Harold's exhaustion. His army had just completed one of the greatest marches in English history, fought a major battle, destroyed a Norwegian invasion. Now, another army had arrived. From the opposite direction, there was scarcely time to mourn the dead. Harold immediately turned south. Once again, English soldiers began marching. South this time, nearly the entire length of England. Some historians estimate Harold's army covered roughly 200 miles in little more than a week. Many soldiers from Stamford Bridge came with him. Others joined along the way. Fresh levies answered the king's call. Yet the army was not quite the same. Some experienced warriors remained in the north. Others had been wounded. Fatigue settled into every step. Picture the long columns moving through autumn rain. Boots worn thin, shoulders aching beneath mail armor, faces weathered by wind and sleepless nights. Yet still they marched, because there was no alternative. Behind them lay England. Ahead, William. Meanwhile, William received constant intelligence from local scouts. Norman cavalry ranged across Sussex. They mapped roads, measured distances, studied hills and forests. Every piece of information mattered. William did not underestimate Harold. He knew the English king had defeated Harold Hardrada only days earlier. That alone demanded respect. Some Norman advisors reportedly suggested remaining on the defensive. Force Harold to attack. Others favored moving inland aggressively. William listened carefully before making his decision. He would fight, but only on ground that favored his army. Choosing a battlefield can determine victory long before swords cross. As October advanced, autumn deepened across southern England. Leaves turned shades of gold and crimson. Morning fog drifted over rolling hills. The air carried the earthy scent of damp forests and harvested fields. Villagers whispered fearful rumors around evening fires. Some claimed William's army numbered 100,000 men. Others insisted giants marched among the Normans. Stories always grow larger than reality. The truth was formidable enough. Perhaps 7,000 Norman soldiers. Perhaps a little more. Perhaps a little less. Archers, infantry, heavy cavalry, professional warriors led by one of Europe's finest commanders. Harold's army, meanwhile, marched relentlessly south. His elite housecarls still formed the backbone of English strength. Around them gathered the FYRD, the local militia called from towns and villages. Brave men, capable men, but many lacked the experience of William's professional knights. Still, they fought for their homes. That has always been a powerful motivation. By the middle of October, the two armies had drawn dangerously close. Scouts from each side reported enemy movements almost hourly. Somewhere beyond the wooded hills of Sussex, each commander knew the other was approaching. The waiting was nearly over. Soon, one ridge outside the small town of Hastings would become the most famous battlefield in English history. There, beneath gray autumn skies, William the Bastard and Harold Godwinson would finally meet face to face. By sunset, one would wear England's crown. The other would belong to history. The Battle of Hastings begins. The morning of October 14th, 1066, arrived quietly. History often does. There was no dramatic trumpet echoing across England. No mysterious sign written across the sky. No voice announcing that this would become one of the most studied battles in the history of Europe. Instead, the sun rose slowly over the rolling hills of Sussex. A thin layer of autumn mist rested across the valleys. The grass glittered with dew. Birds sang as they always had. And somewhere in the distance, thousands of men quietly prepared to kill one another. Nature, as usual, remained completely indifferent. King Harold Godwinson reached a long ridge a few miles northwest of Hastings. Today the place is known simply as Battle. In 1066, it was merely a hill. A very good hill. Military commanders have loved hills for as long as warfare has existed. Gravity becomes your ally. Enemies must climb toward you. Momentum slows. Formations become uneven. Every extra step tires the attacker. Harold recognized excellent defensive ground when he saw it. His army occupied the crest of the ridge. They had arrived during the previous evening after an exhausting march from London. Despite their fatigue, they immediately prepared the position. Axes chopped small trees. Wooden stakes strengthened vulnerable areas. Supplies were distributed. Weapons inspected one final time. Few men slept well. Some prayed. Others stared silently into campfires. Many simply listened to the wind moving through the trees. Imagine standing among them. The smell of damp earth filled the cool morning air. Mail armor felt cold against the skin. Leather straps creaked with every movement. Somewhere nearby, a horse snorted. Someone quietly sharpened an axe. Another soldier kissed a small wooden cross hanging around his neck. The conversations were probably brief. There is only so much to say before a battle. Harold's army formed one enormous defensive line. The famous shield wall. It was not a wall of stone, not a fortress. It was something far more human. Hundreds upon hundreds of warriors standing shoulder to shoulder, each shield overlapping the next. Round wooden shields locked together into a continuous barrier. Behind them stood English housecarls carrying great Danish axes. Behind them again gathered the FYRD, ordinary men called from villages, farms, and towns. From a distance, the formation must have resembled a solid wooden cliff stretching across the ridge. Patient, silent, waiting. The strength of the shield wall depended upon discipline. Every man trusted the one beside him. If one shield moved, a gap appeared. If enough gaps appeared, the line collapsed. It was less a collection of individuals than a single living organism. One body, one purpose. Hold. Harold himself stood near the center. Beside him flew his personal banner, the famous fighting man standard. Nearby also waved the sacred dragon of Wessex, carried by generations of English kings. Those banners mattered. In medieval battles, soldiers constantly searched for their leader's standard. As long as it remained standing, hope remained. Lose the banner. Confusion spread immediately. Harold understood that. So did William. A few miles away, the Norman camp awakened before dawn. The atmosphere there felt different. Less defensive. More expectant. William intended to attack. His soldiers ate an early meal. Bread, cheese, wine, perhaps dried meat. Nothing elaborate. A hungry soldier fights poorly. A soldier with too much food fights even worse. Balance mattered. Priests moved among the ranks offering blessings. Mass was celebrated. Confessions heard. Many knights believed this day might be their last. Better, they thought, to meet eternity with one's soul prepared. William reportedly dressed carefully. Mail armor covered his body. A conical helmet protected his head. A sword hung from his belt. He carried a heavy lance for mounted combat. Unlike later kings who often directed battles from relative safety, William intended to fight personally, exactly as he always had. Then came one of the most famous little moments in medieval history. As William mounted his horse, contemporary writers claim he stumbled, or perhaps his horse stumbled. For an instant, he fell. Some soldiers immediately whispered, "A bad omen." Medieval people took omens seriously, very seriously. An unlucky beginning before battle could spread fear through an army astonishingly fast. William reacted instantly. Rather than appearing embarrassed, he grabbed 2 handfuls of English soil. Holding the earth high above his head, he smiled. "See," he reportedly declared, "I have already taken possession of England." Whether those were his exact words hardly matters. The effect certainly did. Laughter replaced anxiety. Confidence returned. A clever commander understands psychology. William always did. The Norman army advanced toward Harold's Ridge. From the English position, they would have appeared gradually through the morning mist. First distant movement, then bright flashes of sunlight reflecting from helmets. Then banners. Hundreds of banners. Finally, an entire army. William organized his forces into 3 great divisions. On the left stood the Bretons. In the center, the Normans themselves. On the right, soldiers from Flanders, Picardy, and other allied regions. It was a remarkably diverse army. Different languages, different accents, different traditions, united by one ambitious duke. In front came the archers, behind them the infantry, finally the cavalry. It was a sophisticated combined force, something England had rarely faced. Harold's army, by contrast, relied primarily upon infantry. Very good infantry, perhaps the finest defensive infantry in Europe, but infantry nonetheless. Before the fighting began, tradition tells us one Norman knight rode forward alone. His name was Taillefer. He was said to be both warrior and minstrel, an unusual combination. As the armies watched, Taillefer tossed his sword into the air, caught it, then sang of Roland, the great hero of old Frankish legend. His voice carried across the valley. When he finished, he charged, alone, straight toward the English line. It was spectacular and suicidal. He reportedly killed 1 or 2 English warriors before being cut down himself. Perhaps it truly happened. Perhaps later storytellers improved the opening scene. Either way, it perfectly captures the medieval love of dramatic heroism. The battle began with Norman archers. Thousands of arrows darkened the morning sky. They rose together, hung briefly in the sunlight, then descended toward Harold's shield wall. The effect was disappointing. The English occupied higher ground. Most arrows struck shields. Others buried themselves harmlessly in the hillside. Some simply fell short. The shield wall barely moved. William had hoped to weaken Harold before sending infantry. Instead, the English remained exactly where they had started, waiting. Now the infantry advanced. Norman foot soldiers climbed the slope, spears leveled, swords drawn. The distance seemed much longer while marching uphill under enemy observation. Every step brought them closer to the silent wall of shields waiting above. Then, the two armies met. The sound must have been extraordinary. Wood smashing against wood, steel striking iron, men shouting in Norman French and Old English, axes crashing through shields, spears splintering, the steady roar of thousands of voices blending into something almost impossible to distinguish. Modern films often add dramatic music to battles. Real battles never needed it. They created their own. The English line held. Norman infantry pushed. The shield wall pushed back. Housecarls swung their enormous axes with devastating force. One blow could split shield, armor, and man together. Norman soldiers fell. Others climbed over them. The struggle became brutally close. No elegant swordplay. No graceful duels. Only pushing, shoving, swinging, trying to stay alive. The hillside itself became slippery beneath countless feet. Grass turned to mud. Mud slowly turned darker. Time lost meaning. Minutes felt like hours. Watching from horseback, William realized the first assault had failed. The shield wall still stood, exactly where it had stood at sunrise. His infantry began drifting backward. Then something even more dangerous happened. Parts of the Breton division broke. Some soldiers panicked. Others believed the battle already lost. Soon men were running downhill, retreating, perhaps even fleeing. A cry spread rapidly across the Norman army. The Duke is dead. Nothing destroys an army faster than believing its commander has fallen. For one terrifying moment, William's entire invasion stood on the edge of disaster. If panic spread, everything would collapse. The fleet, the campaign, years of preparation, all ending before noon. The English saw the retreat. Some of Harold's men cheered. Others, sensing victory, surged forward from the safety of the shield wall to pursue the fleeing Normans. It was an understandable reaction. After hours of standing still, the enemy finally seemed broken. Surely now was the moment to finish them. But battles often hinge upon one small decision, one moment of excitement, one break in discipline. And on that autumn hillside outside Hastings, the English had just made exactly the mistake William had been hoping for. The next phase of the battle would transform a promising English victory into one of the most famous turning points in military history and determine who would rule England for centuries to come. The turning of the tide. For one breathtaking moment, it appeared that England had won. The Norman line had wavered. Parts of the Breton division were running downhill. Dust rose behind them. Voices echoed across the valley. The cry spread from man to man. They're fleeing. Few sights in battle are more tempting than a retreating enemy. It awakens something ancient inside soldiers. The long hours of fear suddenly dissolve into excitement. Victory feels close enough to touch. And that is often the moment when discipline quietly slips away. Along Harold's shield wall, some of the younger English warriors could no longer contain themselves. Why remain standing behind shields while the enemy escaped? Why wait? Surely the battle was already won. With triumphant shouts, groups of English soldiers broke formation. Not the entire army, not even most of it, but enough. They rushed downhill after the fleeing Normans. Axes raised, spears flashing, adrenaline replacing caution. Imagine their excitement. After holding the ridge for hours, they finally had open ground before them. The enemy appeared frightened, disorganized, broken. What they did not know was that William was still very much alive. The Duke had recognized the danger almost instantly. Seeing panic spread through his own ranks, he acted with astonishing speed. William rode directly into the confusion. He removed his helmet, raised it high, exposed his face to his soldiers. "Look at me." According to Norman chroniclers, he shouted, "I live, and with God's help, we shall still win." The gesture mattered enormously. His men could see him. Their commander was alive, still mounted, still giving orders. Confidence began returning almost immediately. One by one, fleeing knights slowed their horses, turned around, reformed. William had stopped disaster with nothing more than courage and presence of mind. Leadership, sometimes, is simply allowing frightened people to see that you are not afraid. Now William noticed something else. The English line had opened. Not completely, but enough. The warriors chasing downhill had separated themselves from the main shield wall. They were isolated, exposed, perfect targets. William wasted no time. He ordered his cavalry to wheel around. Norman knights who had seemed to be retreating suddenly turned their horses back uphill. Heavy war horses gathered speed astonishingly quickly. Imagine hearing it from the English perspective. First, silence. Then, the distant pounding, growing louder, louder still. Hundreds of horses charging directly toward you. The ground itself beginning to tremble. The isolated English warriors suddenly realized their mistake. They had left the protection of the shield wall. Now there was nowhere to hide. Norman cavalry smashed into them with terrible force. Lances struck first, then swords, then maces. Some English soldiers fought desperately. Others attempted to run uphill. Many never reached the ridge again. Within minutes, the pursuing force had been destroyed. William had transformed a retreat into an opportunity. Whether the retreat had been accidental or became deliberately repeated later remains one of history's fascinating debates. Some historians believe the first withdrawal was genuine panic. Others argue William quickly recognized its potential and intentionally used similar feigned retreats later in the day. Whatever the truth, the result remained the same. The English army had become smaller. Its strongest defense had been weakened. Back upon the ridge, Harold watched everything unfold. He must have understood immediately what had happened. Years of military experience told him exactly why the shield wall existed. Not merely to stop attacks, to prevent excitement from destroying discipline. Now some of his finest men lay dead below the hill. The remaining soldiers tightened their ranks once again. Shields locked together. Axes ready. The wall still stood, but it was no longer quite as solid as before. Small cracks had appeared. William intended to widen them. The battle settled into a relentless rhythm. Attack. Repulse. Retreat. Attack again. Hour after hour. Norman archers fired. Infantry climbed. Cavalry charged. Again. And again. And again. Each assault cost lives. Each assault exhausted both armies. The autumn sun climbed steadily across the sky. Morning became afternoon. The cool air grew warmer beneath heavy armor. Mail shirts that had seemed merely uncomfortable at dawn now felt crushingly heavy. Helmets trapped heat. Throats became dry. Arms ached from lifting shields. Legs trembled with fatigue. Battle is often remembered through moments of heroism. Those moments exist, but between them lies exhaustion. Pure physical exhaustion. Picture one ordinary English housecarl. He has stood almost continuously since sunrise. His shield arm feels numb. His axe grows heavier every hour. His boots sink into blood-soaked earth. The man beside him, someone he has known for years, is suddenly gone. No time to grieve. Someone else steps into the gap. Another Norman attack begins. Lift the shield again. Swing again. Breathe. Repeat. History is built not only by kings, but by thousands of unnamed people who simply refused to move. William's horse galloped constantly along the Norman line. One moment encouraging archers, the next directing cavalry, then reinforcing infantry. He seemed to appear everywhere at once. Contemporary writers repeatedly praised his energy that day. He never stopped moving, never stopped observing, never stopped adjusting his tactics. It is tempting to imagine medieval commanders simply shouting, "Charge," and hoping for the best. William was considerably more sophisticated. He watched the battlefield almost like a chess player. Every weakness mattered. Every opportunity. Every mistake. Patience had defined his childhood. It now defined his generalship. By mid-afternoon, the battlefield looked very different. The smooth green hillside had disappeared beneath thousands of footprints. Broken spears covered the ground. Shattered shields lay scattered among fallen banners. Abandoned helmets reflected the pale autumn sunlight. Horses wandered riderless. The air carried the metallic smell of blood mixed with churned earth and sweat. Crows had already begun circling overhead. Nature wastes very little time. Then William made another adjustment. Earlier, his archers had fired directly toward the shield wall. Most arrows struck harmlessly. Now he ordered them to change their angle. Instead of shooting straight ahead, fire high. Let the arrows fall from above. It sounds obvious. Yet sometimes the simplest ideas emerge only after hours of frustration. Thousands of arrows once again filled the sky. This time they descended almost vertically. Shields protected the front, not the heavens. The effect became far more dangerous. English warriors looked upward instinctively. Some raised shields above their heads. Others could not react quickly enough. Arrows found faces, shoulders, unprotected gaps. The shield wall, so effective against direct attack, suddenly faced a new problem. At the center of the English line stood Harold. Around him gathered his personal bodyguard. The king remained remarkably calm despite hours of relentless assault. His banner still flew proudly. The Dragon of Wessex still rippled in the breeze. As long as those standards remained standing, English morale endured. William understood that too. If Harold fell, the battle might end immediately. Everything now focused upon one point. One king, one banner, one hill. This is where one of history's most famous images appears. The Bayeux Tapestry, created only a few years after the battle, seems to show Harold with an arrow striking near or into his eye. Above the scene appears the Latin phrase identifying the English king. For centuries, this image shaped popular imagination. Harold, killed by an arrow through the eye. It is unforgettable. It is dramatic. It is also not entirely certain. The tapestry has suffered damage, repairs, alterations. Some historians believe the arrow was added later. Others argue it has always been there. Contemporary written accounts disagree. Some mention an arrow. Others describe Harold being cut down by Norman knights. Still others combine both stories. History occasionally refuses to provide satisfying certainty. The truth may never be known exactly. Perhaps an arrow wounded him before mounted knights reached the king. Perhaps not. Whatever happened, the end was approaching. Late in the afternoon, William committed his final great assault. Fresh cavalry gathered. Infantry advanced beside them. Archers continued raining arrows overhead. Everything focused upon the center of the English line, where Harold stood, where England still resisted. The shield wall, weakened by hours of fighting, finally began breaking apart. Not everywhere. One section at a time. A gap. Then another. Norman knights forced their way through. The fighting became desperately close. No formations now. Only scattered groups struggling around the royal standard. Somewhere amid the confusion, Harold disappeared. Whether struck first by an arrow, whether cut down by swords, whether both happened within moments. No one can say with complete confidence. But by sunset, England's king was dead, and with him, the shield wall finally collapsed. The long line that had stood firm since dawn dissolved into chaos. Some English soldiers fled toward nearby woods. Others fought where they stood. Many refused to surrender even after hope had vanished. On one small hill, later remembered as the Malfosse, Norman cavalry pursuing fleeing Englishmen would themselves suffer a bloody surprise before darkness finally ended the fighting. The Battle of Hastings had lasted nearly the entire day. When it was over, the field belonged to William, the bastard of Normandy, had become the conqueror of England. But winning the battle was only the beginning. Because conquering a kingdom on parchment is one thing. Convincing millions of people that they should accept you as their king would prove to be William's greatest challenge yet. A crown won, a kingdom not yet conquered. As darkness settled over the hills of Sussex on the evening of October 14th, 1066, the sounds of battle slowly gave way to something quieter. Not silence. Battlefields are never truly silent. There were wounded men calling for water, horses wandering without riders, armor shifting as exhausted soldiers searched for friends who would never answer. Small fires flickered across the hillside. Priests moved carefully among the dying, offering prayers in Latin beneath an autumn sky now filled with stars. The smell lingered long after the fighting had ended. Smoke, wet grass, freshly broken earth, blood, burning wood. It was a scent that every medieval soldier knew, and hoped never to know again. William remained on the battlefield. He had won. Objectively, decisively. Harold was dead. England's army had been shattered. The famous shield wall no longer existed. By every military measure, the Battle of Hastings had ended in Norman victory. And yet, William was not king. Not yet. Winning a battle and ruling a kingdom are remarkably different things. The English crown did not magically appear in his hands simply because Harold had fallen. London still stood. Most of England had never seen William. Many powerful English nobles were still alive. Large parts of the kingdom had not surrendered. From William's perspective, Hastings had opened the door. He still needed to walk through it. The following morning revealed the true cost of victory. As mist drifted across the battlefield, Norman soldiers searched among the fallen. Friends were found. Brothers, fathers, lords. Many never rose again. Victories in the Middle Ages rarely felt joyful. They felt expensive. Every night lost represented years of training. Every experienced commander who died took knowledge that could never be replaced. William himself had survived remarkably well. Several horses beneath him had reportedly been killed during the battle. That alone illustrates how dangerous his position had been. He had not directed events from miles away. He had fought where arrows and swords could reach him. It was leadership of a kind difficult to imagine in the modern world. Somewhere among the English dead lay King Harold Godwinson. Exactly how his body was identified remains uncertain. Later traditions tell different stories. One claims Harold's face had been so badly damaged that only his companion, Edith Swan Neck, could recognize him. Another version suggests distinctive marks upon his body revealed his identity. Whatever the truth, England's last great Anglo-Saxon king was gone. His reign had lasted less than 10 months. His final battle had lasted less than one day. History can be astonishingly unforgiving. William buried many of his own dead with honor. The English dead remained largely where they had fallen for some time. Medieval warfare rarely allowed elaborate funerals immediately after battle. There was simply too much to do. Supplies needed organizing. Scouts sent ahead. The army rested. Weapons repaired. The campaign continued. Because William understood something essential. Every day spent standing still gave England time to recover. Instead of marching directly toward London, William chose a slower, more calculated approach. At first glance, this seems surprising. Why not rush immediately toward the capital? Because William rarely confused speed with wisdom. London was heavily defended. Its bridge over the Thames formed a natural obstacle. The city's citizens remained loyal to England. A direct assault might prove costly. Instead, William decided to isolate it. Like a hunter patiently surrounding prey rather than charging recklessly into the forest. The Norman army moved east and then north. Villages surrendered one after another. Some welcomed William. Many did not. Resistance appeared in scattered pockets across southern England. Occasionally, local militias attacked Norman foraging parties. Small castles closed their gates. Church bells rang warning after warning. England had lost its king. It had not lost its will. Meanwhile, in London, confusion reigned. Without Harold, who should rule? Several possibilities emerged almost immediately. One was Edgar Atheling. Edgar possessed royal blood. In fact, His hereditary claim was stronger than almost anyone else's. There was only one small complication. He was perhaps 14 years old. England had just witnessed what happened when political uncertainty invited invasion. Many nobles hesitated to place another inexperienced youth upon the throne, especially with William's army marching steadily closer. Still, Edgar was proclaimed king by some leading English nobles. It was an act of hope, perhaps even desperation. The problem was simple. A crown without an army remains little more than an attractive piece of metal. William continued advancing carefully. His army crossed rivers, captured strategic towns, built temporary fortifications almost everywhere they stopped. Norman engineers worked constantly. One of William's greatest strengths had always been organization. Where his army rested, castles appeared, often beginning as simple wooden fortifications built upon earth mounds. Fast, practical, highly effective, these early motte and bailey castles transformed warfare in England. Imagine being an English villager. Yesterday, an open hill overlooked your fields. Today, a wooden fortress stands there. Armed Norman soldiers watch every road. The landscape itself was changing. One particularly tense moment came at Southwark, just south of London Bridge. Norman forces encountered determined resistance. Fighting erupted. William quickly recognized the danger. Storming London across its heavily defended bridge would be extremely costly. So, he simply refused to play by London's rules. Instead of attacking directly, he marched west, crossing the Thames farther upstream, cutting communications, threatening supply routes. Once again, patience became his greatest weapon. Autumn deepened into early winter. Leaves disappeared from the trees. Cold rain turned roads into endless mud. Norman horses struggled through waterlogged fields. Armor rusted if neglected for even a few days. Food became increasingly important. Thousands of soldiers consumed astonishing quantities of bread, grain, meat, and ale. An army marched not only on courage, but on logistics. William never forgot that. Eventually, England's remaining leaders accepted reality. Resistance continued in places, but organized national opposition had collapsed. One after another, powerful English nobles came to William's camp. They brought gifts, hostages, formal declarations of loyalty, not necessarily because they admired him, more often because they recognized the obvious. He had won. Continuing the struggle might destroy what remained of England. Compromise suddenly seemed preferable. Imagine William receiving these delegations. The Norman Duke sat beneath richly embroidered banners. Around him stood mailed knights who only weeks earlier had crossed the Channel. English nobles entered cautiously. Some had fought against him. Some had lost relatives at Hastings. Now they knelt, swore loyalty, acknowledged him as king. History often asks extraordinary things of defeated people. At last, the road to London lay open. The city submitted. Not joyfully, not enthusiastically, but peacefully. William entered England's greatest city in triumph. The streets must have seemed unlike anything many Norman soldiers had ever seen. London already ranked among Northern Europe's largest urban centers. Bustling markets, busy wharves, stone churches, narrow streets crowded with merchants speaking several languages. Smoke drifted constantly above timber rooftops. Church bells echoed across the Thames. For William, it represented far more than a city. It represented legitimacy. Christmas Day approached. The symbolism was perfect. On December 25, 1066, less than 3 months after landing at Pevensey, William entered Westminster Abbey, the same magnificent church that Edward the Confessor had completed shortly before his death, the same church where Harold had been crowned only months earlier. Now, another king approached the altar. The abbey glittered with candles. Gold ornaments reflected dancing flames. The scent of incense filled the vast building. Choirs sang ancient hymns beneath towering arches. English bishops stood beside Norman clergy. Nobles crowded every available space. Outside, Norman soldiers waited nervously, perhaps wisely. Trust had not yet replaced fear. William knelt before the altar. The crown was placed upon his head. Ancient prayers echoed through the church. At that moment, something unexpected happened. The English nobles inside shouted their approval. The Norman soldiers outside heard cheering. They misunderstood. Believing rebellion had erupted inside the abbey, they reacted immediately. Several nearby buildings were set on fire as soldiers rushed to suppress what they imagined was an uprising. Smoke drifted through London on Christmas Day. Inside the abbey, many people fled in panic. Priests hurriedly finished the coronation while much of the congregation disappeared. It may be the only royal coronation in English history accompanied by accidental urban arson. A remarkably Norman beginning to a remarkably Norman reign. William was now King of England. Officially, legally, ceremonially. Yet beneath the crown lay an uncomfortable truth. Conquering England had taken one battle. Keeping England would require nearly 20 more years of relentless determination. A kingdom that refused to submit. A crown can be placed upon a man's head in a single afternoon. Winning the loyalty of an entire kingdom. That takes rather longer. On Christmas Day in 1066, William the Conqueror became England's king. By New Year's Day, large parts of England had absolutely no intention of behaving as though that settled the matter. William understood this almost immediately. A victory at Hastings had destroyed one English army. It had not destroyed English identity. The people still spoke Old English. Their laws remained Anglo-Saxon. Their churches, their customs, their local leaders, all still belonged to the world that had existed before Norman sails appeared on the horizon. The conquest, in many ways, had only just begun. Winter settled heavily across England. Cold rain lashed the countryside. The roads dissolved into endless ribbons of mud. Travel became painfully slow. Rivers overflowed their banks. Bare branches creaked beneath icy winds. Even victorious armies disliked campaigning in winter. Nature cared very little who wore the crown. Yet William refused to remain idle. Instead of returning triumphantly to Normandy, he stayed in England. That decision revealed something fundamental about his character. He had not crossed the channel merely to win a battle. He intended to build a kingdom. His first challenge appeared almost immediately. The English nobility had submitted. Mostly. But submission made under the shadow of armed knights often lasts only until those knights leave. William knew this. So he began replacing uncertainty with something much more permanent. Castles. It is difficult to overstate how shocking Norman castles must have seemed to the English. Before 1066, England possessed fortified towns and ancient Roman walls. But the Norman motte and Bailey Castle was something different. Imagine waking one morning in a quiet English village. Across the river, where yesterday there had only been an open meadow, hundreds of foreign laborers now chopped trees. Earth was being piled into a steep artificial mound. Wooden palisades rose rapidly. By sunset, a fortress overlooked your home. Within a week, armed Norman soldiers watched every road. Within a month, the entire region had changed. Castles were not simply military buildings. They were statements. Stone and timber declarations that said, "We are here, and we are not leaving." One of the first and most important fortifications rose beside the River Thames in London. At first, it was a timber fortress. Centuries later, it would evolve into the magnificent Tower of London. Today, millions of visitors admire its ancient walls. Few stop to imagine what local Londoners must have felt while watching it appear. For them, it represented occupation. Every stone reminded them who now ruled England. William also began making another crucial decision. Who should own England? Not the kingdom itself. The land. Before the conquest, powerful Anglo-Saxon families had controlled enormous estates. Those same families had often fought against William. Leaving them in place would have been optimistic. William preferred certainty. Slowly but relentlessly, English nobles lost their lands. Norman knights received them instead. Imagine a Norman soldier who had crossed the channel with little more than his horse, armor, and ambition. A few years later, he owned villages, forests, mills, entire counties. The conquest became astonishingly profitable for those who had remained loyal. For the English aristocracy, however, it was catastrophic. By the end of William's reign, almost every major landowner in England would be Norman. One battle had transformed the entire ruling class. Of course, the English noticed, and they did not remain quiet. The first serious rebellions erupted within months. In the southwest, in the Welsh borderlands, in Kent, everywhere William seemed to restore order. Another uprising appeared somewhere else. It must have felt like trying to extinguish fires during a windstorm. Stamp out one blaze. Two more begin. William responded as he always had. Quickly, decisively, personally, he rode constantly across England. 1 week in the south, another in the Midlands, then back toward London. His court rarely stayed still. Neither did he. One of the earliest revolts centered around the city of Exeter. The citizens refused to accept Norman authority. Its walls were strong, its defenders determined. William marched west with his army. The siege lasted nearly 3 weeks. Picture the scene. Winter winds sweeping across ancient city walls. Norman engineers constructing siege equipment. Archers exchanging arrows across open ground. Inside the city, food slowly disappearing. Outside, William waited with characteristic patience. Eventually, Exeter surrendered. William showed restraint. The city avoided destruction. But a castle rose almost immediately. Another Norman fortress. Another permanent reminder. Rebellion would now become considerably more difficult. Yet every victory produced another challenge. William faced a problem familiar to every conqueror in history. How do you govern people who neither speak your language nor particularly like you? The Norman ruling class spoke French. The English population spoke Old English. Courts conducted business differently. Legal traditions differed. Even everyday words often required translators. Imagine an English farmer trying to explain a boundary dispute to a Norman official. Neither fully understood the other. Misunderstandings became inevitable, sometimes amusing, often expensive, occasionally fatal. Languages rarely change overnight. But after 1066, English began absorbing thousands of French words. Government, justice, crown, prison, army, beauty, dinner. Many of the words we casually use today quietly entered English because William won at Hastings. History leaves footprints in language as surely as it does in castles. William also reorganized the church. Not because England lacked Christianity. Far from it. English monasteries ranked among Europe's finest. But William believed Norman bishops would prove more loyal. Gradually, English church leaders were replaced. Norman clergy arrived. Magnificent Romanesque cathedrals began appearing across England. Massive stone buildings with soaring arches replaced many older Anglo-Saxon churches. Architecture itself announced the arrival of a new age. Despite these changes, William never underestimated the possibility of rebellion. His household became heavily guarded. Trusted companions surrounded him constantly. Perhaps memories of his own dangerous childhood never truly disappeared. The little boy who had once fled assassins through dark castle corridors still existed somewhere inside the victorious king. Success had changed his circumstances, not his instincts. He trusted carefully, very carefully. Meanwhile, across the English Channel, Normandy still required attention. William now ruled 2 lands. 1 duchy, 1 kingdom, separated by water. Imagine the complexity. A rebellion in Normandy demanded crossing the sea. Trouble in England required sailing back again. Every journey depended upon weather. Every absence invited conspiracy. The channel that had once been merely a border had become the highway connecting William's growing empire. As spring returned in 1067, green spread once more across England's hills. Birdsong replaced winter silence. Farmers returned to their fields. Markets reopened. Life appeared almost normal. Almost. Because beneath the familiar rhythm, everything had changed. French-speaking knights now occupied English castles. Norman sheriffs collected taxes. Foreign bishops preached in ancient churches. And across the kingdom, people whispered a question that refused to disappear. Could the Normans truly stay forever? Many believed not. Many thought William's rule would collapse within a year. Then another year passed. Then another. The castles remained. The Norman garrisons remained. William remained. England slowly realized something profound. The conquest was not temporary. It was becoming permanent. Still, the greatest rebellion of William's reign had yet to come. Far to the north, where proud English earls still remembered freedom, resistance was gathering strength. Soon, Denmark itself would enter the struggle. Entire regions would rise against the Normans. And William, the man who had crossed the sea to claim a kingdom, would answer with such terrifying force that even centuries later, the memory would still carry a name spoken with sadness. The harrying of the North. The harrying of the North. If you travel through northern England today, you will find rolling green hills, ancient stone villages, ruined abbeys, and quiet rivers winding through broad valleys. It is peaceful, beautiful even, the sort of landscape that invites long walks and slow afternoons. Nearly 1,000 years ago, it became the setting for one of the darkest episodes in medieval English history. History remembers it as the harrying of the North. The name itself sounds almost gentle. It was anything but. By the year 1068, William had been king for nearly 2 years. Southern England had begun, however reluctantly, to accept Norman rule. Castles guarded important towns. Norman nobles governed former English estates. Taxes once collected for Anglo-Saxon kings now flowed into Norman hands. On the surface, the conquest seemed successful. But England was never simply one united political community. Regional identities ran deep, especially in the north. The great cities of York and Durham had long histories of independence. Many northern nobles had little affection for southern rulers, even English ones. A Norman king from across the sea inspired even less enthusiasm. Distance also mattered. London felt unimaginably far away. Royal authority weakened with every mile northward. Messages traveled slowly. Armies even more slowly. The farther William marched from his castles in the south, the more uncertain his control became. Rebellion began almost as soon as Norman troops withdrew. It happened repeatedly. William would march north, restore order, build a castle, return south. Soon afterward, the castle found itself surrounded. The garrison attacked. The countryside once again in open revolt. It became a frustrating cycle, rather like trying to hold water in one's hands. No matter how tightly you grasp, some always escapes. One major uprising centered once again upon York. The city occupied an enormously important position. Control York, and you controlled much of northern England. Lose York, and everything north of the Humber became uncertain. William understood this perfectly. So did his enemies. The city changed hands more than once during these turbulent years. Norman garrisons occupied it. Rebels expelled them. William returned. The pattern repeated. Each campaign became more expensive, more exhausting, more dangerous. Then the situation grew dramatically worse, because England's enemies noticed the unrest. Across the North Sea, King Sweyn II Estridsson watched events carefully. The Danish monarchy still maintained close connections with England. After all, only a generation earlier, not the Great had ruled both kingdoms. Many English nobles hoped Danish intervention might finally remove William. In 1069, a Danish fleet appeared off the English coast. Imagine the excitement spreading through northern England. Ships, hundreds of them. Not Norman ships, Danish ships. Perhaps salvation had arrived. Local rebels immediately joined forces with the newcomers. York rose once more. The Norman garrison found itself trapped. The city erupted into violence. Contemporary chroniclers describe flames consuming buildings while desperate fighting filled the streets. Many Norman soldiers were killed. Others never escaped. For the first time since Hastings, William faced something approaching a genuine national crisis. This was no isolated rebellion. It threatened the entire conquest. When news reached William, he reacted exactly as those who knew him expected. He moved north immediately. There was no hesitation, no lengthy debate, no attempt to negotiate from afar. He would deal with the rebellion personally. Again, picture the Norman army marching through autumn rain. Heavy wagons sank into muddy roads. Pack horses struggled beneath supplies. Cold winds swept across open fields. The farther north they traveled, the more obvious the destruction became. Burnt farms, abandoned villages, bridges damaged by retreating rebels. The campaign became slower with every mile. Yet William continued relentlessly. Those who had served him since Normandy recognized the expression on his face. Calm, focused, determined. The same look he had worn before Hastings. Only now, something else accompanied it. Anger. York could not withstand the king's return. The Danish fleet, despite its impressive arrival, proved less committed than many English rebels had hoped. Negotiations followed. Money changed hands. The Danes accepted payment and eventually withdrew. It was, in many ways, a very medieval solution. If conquering a kingdom appears difficult, being paid to sail home becomes surprisingly attractive. The English rebels suddenly found themselves standing alone. William had expected resistance. He had not expected betrayal by their allies. History is filled with unfortunate timing. At this point, William made one of the most controversial decisions of his entire reign. He concluded that ordinary military victories would never permanently secure northern England. Rebellions kept returning because the countryside continued supporting them. Food, shelter, livestock, supplies, local knowledge. Without these, large-scale resistance became almost impossible. So William resolved to remove them completely. What followed has echoed through history for nearly 1,000 years. Norman forces spread across wide areas of northern England. Villages were burned, granaries destroyed, livestock slaughtered or driven away, stored food confiscated, fields devastated. Anything capable of sustaining future rebellions disappeared. Imagine standing in a small farming village one cold winter morning. Smoke appears on the horizon. Soon horsemen emerge. They carry Norman banners. Within hours, homes burn. The harvest you spent months gathering is gone. Your animals vanish. Your family flees into forests already stripped of food. Winter approaches. Where do you go? How do you survive? For countless ordinary people, there was no good answer. Medieval chroniclers, even those generally sympathetic toward William, struggled to describe what happened. The historian Orderic Vitalis, writing several decades later, condemned the campaign in unusually strong language. He described widespread starvation, entire communities abandoned, people reduced to eating roots, bark, and whatever they could find. Some accounts even mention cannibalism during the desperate famine that followed. Such reports may contain exaggeration. Medieval writers often employed vivid language to express moral outrage. Yet archaeology supports the broader picture. Many settlements declined dramatically. Some disappeared altogether. Large areas remained economically damaged for generations. Modern historians continue debating the exact scale. How many died? Thousands? Tens of thousands? The evidence cannot provide precise numbers. What remains beyond serious dispute is that northern England suffered immensely. Why would William do this? The question has troubled historians for centuries. Was it cruelty? Calculation? Fear? Perhaps all three. William had spent his entire life confronting rebellion. As a child, conspiracies nearly killed him. As Duke of Normandy, repeated revolts threatened everything he built. As King of England, each northern uprising reminded him how fragile conquest could be. From William's perspective, mercy had repeatedly failed. Harshness, he believed, might finally end the cycle. It largely did. After the harrying, northern England never again mounted resistance on the same scale during William's reign. The military objective succeeded. The human cost proved enormous. History rarely offers victories without shadows. Winter deepened. Snow occasionally covered the ruined countryside. Cold winds swept across blackened fields where villages had once stood. Silence replaced the sounds of ordinary rural life. No cattle lowing. No children playing. Only empty landscapes interrupted by the ruins of churches and cottages. Imagine riding through those valleys months later. You pass abandoned farms, collapsed roofs, fields returning slowly to wilderness. It must have felt almost haunted. William himself continued moving constantly. He inspected castles, rewarded loyal supporters, punished remaining rebels. His authority now stretched from the English Channel almost to the Scottish border. Almost. Because another ruler watched carefully from beyond England's northern frontier. Malcolm III. Scotland had offered refuge to several English nobles fleeing Norman rule. Among them was Edgar Atheling, whose royal blood still made him a potential rival. As long as Edgar remained free, William could never feel entirely secure. Once again, the Channel and the North Sea reminded William of an uncomfortable truth. England was not isolated. Every neighboring kingdom possessed reasons to interfere. Every exiled noble represented future trouble. Every surviving claimant carried the possibility of another rebellion. The conquest was entering a new phase. Less about winning battles, more about securing a dynasty, more about building institutions strong enough to survive after William himself was gone. And for that, he would commission one of the most extraordinary surveys ever attempted in the medieval world. A book so detailed that nearly a millennium later, historians still use it to understand everyday life in Norman England. It would become known simply as the Doomsday Book, the book that counted a kingdom. By the mid-1080s, nearly 20 years had passed since the arrows flew over the ridge at Hastings. Children born on the day William landed at Pevensey were now old enough to remember only Norman kings. A new generation was growing up. For them, French-speaking lords and English castles were no longer shocking. They were simply normal. History has a curious habit of doing that. The extraordinary slowly becomes ordinary. The impossible quietly becomes tradition. Yet William never allowed himself the luxury of believing his kingdom was completely secure. He had survived too much. Too many betrayals. Too many rebellions. Too many ambitious men convinced they deserved his throne. Even after 2 decades, he still thought like the orphan duke who had once slept with armed guards outside his bedroom. Success had made him wealthier. It had not made him careless. England itself had changed almost beyond recognition. Where Anglo-Saxon earls had once ruled, Norman barons now governed. French had become the language of the royal court. Latin remained the language of the church and government. Old English continued in villages, marketplaces, and farmhouses. Imagine walking through London around 1085. A Norman knight gives orders in French. A monk records taxes in Latin. A baker sells bread in Old English. 3 languages sharing the same street. Sometimes cooperating. Sometimes colliding. It must have sounded wonderfully confusing. William also spent these years building in stone. Timber castles had served their purpose during the Conquest. But timber burns. Stone endures. Across England, wooden fortifications slowly gave way to towering keeps. Massive walls climbed into the sky. Rounded arches framed heavy doorways. Churches became grander. Cathedrals larger. Norman architecture announced permanence. It declared that these rulers had not come merely to visit. They intended to remain. Even today, one can stand inside ancient Norman churches and still feel the confidence of those thick stone walls. They were built to survive centuries. Remarkably, many have. Despite these achievements, another danger emerged. Not from England. From across the Channel. Relations between William and his eldest son, Robert Curthose, deteriorated badly. Like many royal families, they struggled with succession. Only their arguments involved castles, armies, and occasional warfare. Robert believed his father refused to grant him sufficient authority. William believed Robert lacked patience. Neither was entirely wrong, nor entirely willing to compromise. One famous story tells of Robert's younger brothers emptying chamber pots over him from an upper window as a practical joke. Robert did not appreciate the humor. Sibling rivalries have existed for as long as families themselves. Most, thankfully, do not escalate into armed rebellion. This one did. At one point, Robert actually fought against his father. Picture that. The boy William had hoped would inherit everything now stood on the opposite side of the battlefield. During one skirmish, Robert reportedly unhorsed William. Only after recognizing the familiar voice beneath the helmet did he realize whom he had attacked. The fighting stopped. For a moment. Father and son eventually reconciled, but the relationship never fully healed. William had conquered England. Managing his own children proved considerably more difficult. History occasionally enjoys irony. Meanwhile, events in Northern Europe once again demanded attention. Rumors spread that Nutfor was planning an invasion of England. Whether the threat was as serious as William feared remains debated. William, however, took no chances. He wanted to know exactly what resources his kingdom possessed. Not approximately. Exactly. How many villages? How many mills? How many plows? Who owned what? Who owed taxes? How much wealth could England produce if another invasion came? The result would become one of the most extraordinary administrative achievements of the medieval world. Royal commissioners traveled across England, county by county, village by village, estate by estate. They asked remarkably detailed questions. Who owned this land before 1066? Who owns it now? How many farmers live here? How many oxen? How many pigs? How much woodland? How much meadow? How much could the estate produce? How much does it produce now? Imagine the arrival of these officials in a tiny English village. People gather outside the church. The king's representatives begin asking questions, carefully recording every answer. Nothing seems too small. Nothing too insignificant. Your field matters. Your cow matters. Your fishing pond matters. Even your beehives matter. For perhaps the first time in English history, an entire kingdom was being measured. The survey moved with astonishing speed. Considering medieval travel conditions, its efficiency remains remarkable. Within roughly a year, enormous quantities of information reached the royal administration. Clerks organized the material, compared figures, copied records on a parchment. Eventually, the results became known as the Doomsday Book. The name itself appeared later. People compared its judgments to the Last Judgment described in Christian belief. Final. Authoritative. Impossible to appeal. If the Doomsday Book said you owned 3 plows, then you owned 3 plows. Arguing otherwise rarely improved one's situation. Modern readers sometimes imagine medieval government as disorganized. The Doomsday Book destroys that stereotype. Its detail is astonishing. Historians still consult it nearly 1,000 years later. It tells us where vineyards existed in England, where fisheries operated, how many slaves remained, which villages prospered, which had declined since the Conquest. It offers an extraordinary snapshot of everyday life. Imagine leaving behind a document so thorough that scholars continue studying it after 10 centuries. William's greatest monument may not be a castle. It may be a ledger. The survey also served another purpose. Taxes. Kings require money. Castles are expensive. Armies even more so. Government, it turns out, has always discovered creative reasons to count everyone's property. Some traditions possess remarkable longevity. By 1086, William had reached about 58 years of age. That might not sound especially old today. In the 11th century, it was the age of a veteran. Years of campaigning had transformed him. The energetic young duke who leaped into cavalry charges now carried the weight of decades. His body had grown heavier. Contemporary writers describe him as increasingly stout. Old injuries accumulated. Long rides became more uncomfortable. Yet mentally, he remained formidable, sharp, demanding, relentlessly attentive to detail. That same year, William gathered his greatest landowners at Old Sarum. Thousands attended. Barons, knights, church leaders, officials. There, they swore an oath directly to the king, not merely to their immediate lord, to William himself. This mattered enormously. Under the feudal system, loyalties could become complicated. William deliberately simplified them. Whatever other obligations existed, the king came first. It was another quiet but profound change. Power became increasingly centralized. England grew stronger as a monarchy. Standing before that great assembly, William must have reflected, however briefly, upon the extraordinary journey that had brought him there. Born an illegitimate child, nearly murdered before reaching adulthood, mocked as William the Bastard, forced to fight for Normandy, then crossing the sea with 7,000 men, winning England, surviving rebellions, reshaping an entire kingdom. It is the sort of story that sounds almost fictional, except it happened. Still, one challenge remained unconquered. Time. No sword defeats it. No castle withstands it forever. No king escapes it. William had spent his entire life overcoming enemies. Now his greatest opponent required neither army nor ambition, only patience. And in the summer of 1087, during what should have been another ordinary military campaign in Normandy, that final enemy would make its move. The final ride of the conqueror. There comes a moment in every long life when the victories begin to fade into memory, and the body quietly reminds even the strongest ruler that it has carried its burdens for many years. For William the Conqueror, that moment arrived in the summer of 1087. He had ruled England for more than 20 years, Normandy for over 50. He had survived assassination attempts, civil wars, invasions, rebellions, storms at sea, and one of the most famous battles in European history. He had defeated nearly every enemy who stood before him. There remained only one opponent that no king, no matter how determined, has ever conquered: time. Ironically, William did not spend his final campaign in England. He was back in Normandy, the duchy that had shaped him, the land of his childhood fears, youthful ambitions, and greatest early victories. Political tensions with the Philip I had once again erupted into conflict. Relations between the Norman Duke and the French king had rarely been warm. They had spent decades competing for influence, territory, and prestige. By 1087, both men were older. Neither had become noticeably more patient. One chronicler even records that Philip mocked William's increasing weight, joking that the English king was pregnant and would soon give birth. It was exactly the sort of royal insult that history remembers because it sounds surprisingly modern. Apparently, medieval kings also enjoyed childish jokes. William, however, did not laugh. He gathered his army and marched against the town of Mantes, a settlement loyal to the French crown. The campaign itself was not especially unusual. Norman soldiers advanced. The town was attacked. Buildings caught fire. Smoke rose above the rooftops. It looked much like countless medieval sieges before it. Then, everything changed. As William rode through the burning streets, his horse stumbled. Or perhaps it stepped onto smoldering debris. Accounts differ. What most sources agree upon is the result. The saddle's front struck William violently in the abdomen. For a younger man, the injury might have been painful but survivable. For a ruler approaching 60, already carrying considerable weight after decades of campaigning, it proved catastrophic. At first, William apparently tried to ignore the injury. Kings were expected to appear invincible. Admitting weakness rarely encouraged confidence. But within days it became obvious something was terribly wrong. Pain increased. Movement became difficult. Fever followed. His companions abandoned the campaign and carried him to the nearby priory of St. Gervas. There, William took to his bed. He would never rise again. Imagine the room. Late summer sunlight filtered through narrow windows. The smell of wax candles mixed with medicinal herbs. Outside, church bells echoed across Rouen. Inside, the most powerful ruler in northwestern Europe lay dying. Not on a battlefield, not beneath enemy swords, but in quiet surroundings, attended by priests, physicians, and loyal companions. History often ends not with dramatic speeches, but with whispered conversations. William understood that death was approaching. Like many medieval rulers, he devoted his remaining strength to putting his affairs in order. One of his greatest concerns involved succession. His lands would not remain united. Instead, he divided them between his sons. His eldest surviving son, Robert Curthose, would inherit Normandy. England, however, would pass to William II, often called William Rufus because of his reddish hair. His youngest son, Henry I, received a large sum of money rather than territory. It must have seemed a reasonable compromise. History would later demonstrate it was anything but. The brothers would spend years fighting one another. Apparently, William had successfully conquered England, but not sibling rivalry. Several chroniclers preserve parts of William's final reflections. Whether every word is authentic is impossible to know. Medieval writers occasionally improved dying speeches for literary effect. Still, the themes feel believable. William acknowledged both his achievements and his mistakes. He reportedly expressed regret over some of the suffering caused during his reign, especially the devastation inflicted upon northern England. Perhaps advancing age changes how rulers remember their victories. Perhaps the silence of approaching death leaves little room for self-deception. Whatever passed through William's mind during those final days, only he truly knew. On September 9, 1087, William died. He was approximately 59 years old. For a few moments, perhaps, there was simply stillness. Then reality returned. The king was dead. And almost immediately, the practical concerns of medieval politics resumed. One might imagine solemn ceremonies beginning at once. Instead, chaos arrived surprisingly quickly. Many nobles quietly departed. Their first priority became securing their own lands before rivals acted. Servants disappeared. Some reportedly stole whatever valuables they could carry. Even in royal households, loyalty occasionally lasted only as long as the king himself. Death has a curious way of revealing character. William's body was eventually prepared for burial. His final resting place would be the magnificent Abbey of Saint Etienne, the monastery he himself had founded decades earlier. The funeral procession carried him across Normandy, along roads he had ridden countless times as duke, past villages that had watched his astonishing rise from vulnerable child to conqueror of England. It should have been a magnificent farewell. History, however, had one final twist prepared. When mourners gathered inside the abbey, an unexpected interruption occurred. A local man stepped forward. He announced that the church had been built upon land unlawfully taken from his family. Until compensation was paid, the burial could not legally proceed. Imagine the awkward silence. The funeral of Europe's most famous conqueror paused because of a property dispute. After hurried negotiations, payment was finally arranged. Only then could the ceremony continue. Even in death, legal paperwork found William. Some things truly never change. Then came perhaps the most infamous episode of all. William had died weeks earlier during unusually warm weather. Medieval embalming techniques were limited. His body had deteriorated significantly before reaching the abbey. The stone sarcophagus prepared for him proved slightly too small. When attendants attempted to force the body inside, it ruptured. Contemporary chroniclers described the scene with remarkable honesty. The odor became overwhelming. The congregation reportedly scattered. Priests hurriedly completed the service amid considerable discomfort. It is an ending so profoundly human that later generations often struggled to believe it. The man who had transformed England, whose armies had crossed the sea, whose castles dominated the landscape, whose name inspired awe across Europe, left the world amid confusion, embarrassment, and the uncomfortable realities of mortality. History possesses an unforgiving sense of humor. William's grave itself would not remain undisturbed. Over the centuries, wars, revolutions, and changing fortunes repeatedly affected the abbey. His tomb was damaged more than once. Much of his remains disappeared during later upheavals. Today, only a single thigh bone is traditionally believed to survive. Whether even that can be proven remains uncertain. The conqueror who reshaped a kingdom left behind remarkably little of himself, except for everything else. Because although William's body returned to dust, the England he created did not. Its government, its castles, its language, its aristocracy, its laws, even its monarchy, all carried the imprint of one extraordinary Norman duke who refused to believe that birth should determine destiny. And as the centuries unfolded, that imprint would spread far beyond England itself, across Britain, across oceans, and eventually across much of the world. That, perhaps, became William's greatest conquest of all, the long shadow of the conqueror. If you were to walk across England today, you would not meet William the Conqueror. You would not hear Norman knights riding along muddy roads. You would not see banners fluttering above freshly built wooden castles. The battle cries of Hastings have long since faded into silence. The smoke from burned villages has drifted away. The people who fought, ruled, rebelled, and dreamed beneath those gray autumn skies have all become part of history. And yet, William is still there, quietly, almost invisibly, hidden in the foundations beneath the country he conquered. History has a peculiar way of surviving. It does not always remain inside books. Sometimes it lingers in the shape of streets. Sometimes in the language people speak. Sometimes in the walls of old churches. Sometimes in institutions so familiar that nobody stops to ask where they came from. William's greatest victory may not have been winning a battle. It may have been making his revolution feel ordinary. Stand before the great white walls of the Tower of London. Look upward toward its Norman keep. Its thick stone walls were never built simply to impress. They were designed to dominate, to remind everyone entering London that a new power ruled England. Generation after generation looked upon those walls, some with admiration, some with fear, many with both. Kings came and went. Queens were crowned. Prisoners entered its gates. Executions took place nearby. Treasures accumulated. Empires rose. Empires fell. The tower remained, like William himself, stubbornly refusing to disappear. Travel farther across England and Norman churches continue appearing almost unexpectedly. Rounded arches, massive pillars, heavy stone towers, buildings that have survived earthquakes of history, wars, plagues, reformations, bombs, weather. They remain because William's generation built not merely for themselves, but for centuries they would never live to see. There is something strangely comforting about that. People whose names are forgotten still laid stones that continue carrying roofs nearly 1,000 years later. History is often anonymous. Even the English language carries William's fingerprints. Imagine sitting down to dinner. There is a curious linguistic puzzle hiding on the table. The animals in the field usually kept their Old English names: cow, sheep, pig. But once those animals became food for the Norman nobility, their names often changed into French: beef, mutton, pork. The farmer who raised the animal spoke English. The noble who ate it spoke French. Centuries later, the vocabulary quietly remembers both. Every meal tells a tiny story about 1066. Most people simply never notice. The legal system changed. Government changed. Land ownership changed. Architecture changed. The relationship between king and nobility changed. England gradually became one of the most centralized kingdoms in medieval Europe. Not overnight. History almost never works that quickly. But William accelerated changes already beginning and introduced many entirely new ones. He ruled harshly, sometimes brilliantly, sometimes brutally, often both at once. Historians have debated William for centuries. Was he a hero? A tyrant? A visionary? An opportunist? The answer depends largely upon where one chooses to stand. From Normandy, he appears as an extraordinary leader whose determination overcame impossible odds. From the perspective of many Anglo-Saxons, he arrived as a foreign conqueror whose armies devastated their homeland. Neither view is entirely wrong. Both contain truth. History rarely rewards simple answers. The people who change the world most dramatically are often those who inspire both admiration and resentment. William belongs firmly within that category. Consider, for a moment, the astonishing improbability of his life. An illegitimate child born into political uncertainty. A boy surrounded by assassins before he could fully understand why men wanted him dead. A teenager forced to defend his inheritance. A young duke mocked because of his birth. A commander patient enough to wait months for the right wind. A conqueror who crossed the sea. A king who transformed an entire nation. It reads almost like myth. Except myths usually become less believable over time. William's story becomes more remarkable the closer historians examine it. Of course, not everything he built endured exactly as he intended. His sons quarreled. His descendants fought civil wars. The Norman aristocracy slowly blended with the English population. French and English merged into a new language. Old divisions softened. Children whose grandparents had once stood on opposite sides of Hastings eventually married one another. Time has a remarkable talent for erasing the sharpest lines. Even conquests become ancestry. It is tempting to imagine history as a series of clear endings. The Romans leave. The Anglo-Saxons arrive. The Vikings depart. The Normans conquer. Reality is gentler than that. Nothing ends all at once. The Anglo-Saxon world did not vanish on October 14th, 1066. It lingered. Inside villages. Inside families. Inside songs and stories. Inside laws that Norman kings quietly decided were worth keeping. Likewise, the Normans themselves slowly became English. Within a few generations, descendants of the conquerors no longer thought of England as foreign. It had become home. History, despite appearances, often resembles a river more than an explosion. Its waters mix gradually, rarely suddenly. Imagine returning to that quiet hillside near Battle today. The wind still moves through the grass. Birds still circle overhead. The ridge still overlooks the valley below. Visitors walk peaceful paths where thousands once fought from sunrise until dusk. Children laugh. Dogs chase sticks. Photographers wait patiently for the evening light. Very little suggests that one October day changed the course of English history forever. Nature has covered the scars remarkably well. It usually does. Perhaps that is one of history's gentlest lessons. Empires seem permanent. Kings appear invincible. Castles look eternal. Yet all of them eventually become stories. The people who once believed themselves to be shaping the future eventually become names on old parchment. Their ambitions fade. Their arguments disappear. Only the consequences remain. William almost certainly never imagined people would still discuss him nearly 1,000 years later. He simply wanted a kingdom. History gave him something much larger. A legacy. And so, as our journey finally comes to its end, let us leave William not upon a battlefield, not inside a great castle, not even beneath the crown he fought so hard to wear. Instead, picture him once more as that young duke standing on the Normandy coast in the autumn of 1066. The sea stretches endlessly before him. Hundreds of ships rock gently upon the water. The wind has finally changed. Behind him waits everything he has spent a lifetime building. Ahead, an uncertain future. He cannot know whether he will die upon an English hillside, whether his army will fail, whether history will remember him as William the Bastard, or William the Conqueror. He only knows that the tide is right. Sometimes history turns not because someone is guaranteed success, but because someone decides that waiting is no longer enough. The sails rise. The ropes are cast free. The fleet begins moving across the gray waters of the English Channel. Slowly, quietly, almost peacefully. Behind every wave follows another. Behind every generation comes the next. Kings become legends. Legends become history. And history, like the sea between England and Normandy, never truly stands still. So, as the night grows quieter and the centuries drift gently past, allow the echoes of Norman horses, monastery bells, autumn winds, and distant waves to fade softly into the darkness. Sleep well, and thank you for traveling through one of the greatest stories the medieval world ever told.